All right, Saints fans and Hootans from all over the world. This is Kyle T. Mosley with the Saints News Network crew. I got Brendan Boylan and Mr. John Hendrix in the house. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Yeah, all right.
Rested.
I'm
Late
glad
night last night.
Man, I'm not. And Brendan, how you been making out, man? You've been producing videos all day, yesterday.
Man, yesterday, today, got some stuff going on at the house, the place I live, going up for sale soon. So we had the realtor here today too. So it's been real busy.
Oh, wow. All right. Marty, I see you. Who that? Yeah. We are ready for day 2 of the NFL draft, the 2020 NFL draft. The New Orleans Saints on yesterday pulled off a New Orleans Saints type of shocker, right? They went ahead and they selected offensive lineman Mr. Cesar Ruiz out of the University of Michigan. A lot of people are up in arms a little bit about it, but after today, I think it makes a lot of sense. You know, John, take us there. What's going on inside of the mind of the New Orleans Saints and why they made that selection?
Well, I mean, first of all, Sean Payton was very open in saying that, hey, look, we didn't draft this guy to be a backup. And he, kind of singled out that, hey, somebody like Larry Warford is going to have to compete. That's how you have to build up your roster in these types of spaces. And, we talked about it and talking about, hey, it'd be hard to see them move on from Warford, but you make a move like that. And then you given how Ruiz is his smarts from what his coaches had said and, just what he feels is best in his particular game makes a lot of sense. And if they, were to get rid of Warford, they can save, at least $8 million. I think it was, it might be $7.75 million. I'd have to get the exact, but they can save a good chunk of money. He's a great candidate to trade up. Now, maybe you make a play for Quan Alexander using him. I don't know. There's a lot of things that you could do potentially there, but, getting him, I get it's not the pick everybody thought, especially LSU fans. I get it. Patrick Queen was there. They could have taken him, but, ultimately Sean Payton's draft board is greater than everybody else's draft board. So that's the direction the Saints went because that was they said that was one of their 2-starred prospects, actually. So that they felt like they wanted to get and had to get. And here's, without going on too much of a rant, right, the thing that he really hit home is the fact that Ruiz is a very A-learned player, and so being that you don't have a spring off season, he's a guy who's extremely intelligent, wowed him at the combine with some of the knowledge that he has. And so, look, I think you're going to have somebody come in that's going to be impact starter day one, like a Ryan Ramczyk, Eric McCoy's been, and just be absolutely killer for this team.
Right. In the presser, Sean Payton told us that he did not draft this kid to sit behind Larry Warford or sit behind anybody. He wants him to be able to make an immediate impact, right? And today's presser, especially with his old coach, Coach Warner from the University of Michigan, and talking to the kid himself, you can see how intelligent he is and how thoughtful he is about the whole process. I think we have a really good, solid prospect and a good winner on that end. Brendan, you did a little bit on him earlier today in an article. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think if once you get past the initial shock, and I said it in the article, once you get past that initial shock, if you're an LSU fan, if you were really hoping for a linebacker, you understand how good of a pick this was. I gave it a B+, A-, somewhere in that range, but it made a lot of sense for a couple reasons. Obviously, the ones that you already brought up, but I want to focus back on Larry Warford and the situation he has. He carries the second highest cap hit of anyone on the team next season. So if you're able to clear up some of that money, you're able to have a little bit more spending cash to maybe work out a new deal for Ramczyk, work out a new deal for Lattimore and Kamara. So you already have a lot of problems going into next offseason trying to retain that talent of the 2017 draft. And I'm not saying this is the perfect solution, but it certainly frees up a little bit more money, of a little bit more wiggle room. And between that and the play of Warford towards the second half of the season last year, I think it makes a lot of sense. And like I said, once you take a second, you step back, and you get over maybe the shock or the disappointment, you realize this was a really solid pick.
Yeah, I think the kid is going to be potential one of those good linemen like Jari Evans, Carl Nix, and along that line, that vein, I should say. And I really think when you look at what the Saints are doing, and John, you can attest to this, they always build from where? The inside.
From within.
So
Yep.
that's sticking with their philosophy. All right, guys, what to expect on today, John? What do you believe the Saints will do in day 2?
Well, look, I think they're going to find a way to get into the second round. I'm interested to see where exactly they'll try to trade up. I'm not going to be shocked if they give away something for 2021, a second round pick next year. Shoot, maybe even their first round to move up, or they package Warford or something along that lines to get a pick there. I think they've got enough ammo to do so. They pick at 88 right now. I think they're trying to pick realistically within the 50 to 60 range. Maybe is where they could. Maybe if they can get into the high 40s, that would be ideal as well. But Peyton said there's a lot of people that they still have a lot of first round grades on right now, and there's a lot of players that they love that are still left. He did say that they're going to take a very patient approach to things. So I guess what you can expect is they don't expect to give away the farm to get where they need to go, but I feel like they got the right pieces. I'm probably thinking more wide receiver is where we look at. Linebacker, I don't know if they're going to get one. And, based off the things and kind of reading into some of the things that he said, they may wait and get a linebacker after all this craziness dries up. Nigel Bradham's a guy I could think of, Alec Ogletree, free agents that are just sitting there out of work right now. I mean, those are guys that you can plug in. I mean, may not be ideal for some, but think about what the Saints defense is trying to accomplish. Getting a veteran like that could be go a long way. So maybe they don't draft a linebacker. And I think with the Chargers moving up and getting Kenneth Murray, that's probably the guy that they might have wanted to target there. Potentially, they were linked to Clemson's A.J. Terrell and Kinlaw, South Carolina. They watched them as well. But, I think it's got to be a wide receiver today.
Okay. Brendan, what about yourself?
Well, obviously, I think linebacker's still the biggest position in need. But to John's point, there's not a whole lot left on the board in terms of inside linebackers that could step in, make an immediate impact. I have a weird feeling, and I don't know, it was about 10 minutes before we got on the air and we're messaging back and forth in our group chat. I have a weird feeling it might be a quarterback.
Really? Interesting.
I do. I have a weird feeling. It's not like a super strong feeling, but it is a weird feeling that after being so thrown off yesterday, they're going to throw everybody off again today.
Okay. What's going on, Jeff?
We're gonna have to talk people off a ledge if that happens. So look, I mean, there's talented guys there from, right? Jalen Hurts. I mean, those are guys there. If that's who they trade up to get into the second, I just be like, I just don't know this team anymore, right? You think you got a pulse on them, you think you understand, and then if they would pull something like that, I'm not saying it's out of the realm of possibilities, but look, it's interesting that Brendan brings it up, and it's possible, right? Anything's possible. Anything's on the table, right? As long as they don't take a kicker or a punter, I think we're okay, right? But
right. All right, we got one question before we get off the air and kind of take some time until the Saints do draft or if they draft up. But Jerry has a question. He said, do you think we need to trade up in round 2 to get a linebacker or a QB? And you already talked about QB, Brendan. And John, you gave your feelings about that. But what about the linebacker side? Do we jump up to get the linebacker or, like you say, would it be the wide receiver?
I mean, personally, what I feel like there's some talented linebackers there. I don't know if you go say that some of them might be a reach on the second round. But again, I said it last night. I've been saying it for a while. Logan Wilson out of Wyoming is probably my favorite linebacker prospect. Akeem Davis Gaither is another one to keep an eye out on. I think that's another one that could potentially fit. So between that, those are two of the linebackers I could think of off the top of my head. I think there's a couple other one that can last a little. Evan Weaver, I think he's probably more of the third, fourth round guy. That would be one to keep an eye out on. But, it's possible to see him trade up to get a linebacker. But it's really going to be somebody that they've met with and probably feel like they've got an outstanding grade on. But the more it seems, I feel like it's got to be a wide receiver.
And Steve Burgess, he wants to know about the depth at cornerback. Brendan, is that a possibility?
Yeah, I think it is. The big thing here at the cornerback spot is, and John alluded to it. You had a good grade on AJ Terrell coming out of Clemson, and I think he went a lot earlier than a lot of people thought. So that might throw a little wrench into your board, but that's certainly possible. However, I don't think it's the biggest need. I think it goes linebacker, receiver, and then corner. So if you feel like there's a corner that outgrades the other two spots, wonderful. But if not, you kind of gotta go with the needs at this point.
All right. All right. We're about to jump off, and we'll be back a little bit in the program. Christian Sessions, Brendan says, the Butler believe that or believe it that we should go for Jalen Hurt. And David Thompson, who that, baby? We see you. All right, guys. We will be back in the program a little bit later. We will still be streaming and give you guys some analysis from time to time. This is Kyle T. Mosley with Brendan Boylan as well as John Hendrix. But let's have a great day 2 of the NFL draft. Who that, baby? All right. Thank you, guys. All right, guys. Looks like Joe Burrow has someone to throw the football to other than AJ Green. T. Higgins was taken by the Cincinnati Bengals. And we now have another wide receiver off the board with Michael Pittman from USC going to the Indianapolis Colts. And the Lions are now on the clock. Okay, the Lions picked DeAndre Swift out of the University of Georgia. Swift is a very good prospect, man. You know, if you are an SEC fan like I am, the junior running back, he came out of Georgia. He's very fast, elusive type of guy, has all of the intangibles that you like to have in a running back. He is a little bit shorter. He is around 5'9", but he has 212 pounds on him. Very good running back. He gave LSU some problems. He's given most of the SEC some problems, but I think the Lions, when looking at the draft board, they really did need a running back. Brendan, what are your thoughts about the Lions selection on Swift?
Man, I love DeAndre Swift. This is also coming from a guy who spent a lot of time in the state of Georgia. Swift's a real special talent. You know, you look at what Georgia's been able to produce at the running back positions over the years, and he's a little bit different. You know, you have Gurley that came out a couple years ago, and then, of course, Nick Chubb, both a little bit more power runners. Then you have Swift, who, all pun intended, is a little more swifty on his feet. And I felt like if there was going to be a quote-unquote Kamara replacement, I know a lot of people were talking about it, and I really didn't understand why. Swift would have been a guy that made a lot of sense, that could do a lot of things very similar to Alvin. I think it's a really good pick. You know, the one thing with the Lions, though, is you look over the years, and they've drafted and they've had running backs like this. Amir Abdullah, Reggie Bush was up there with Matt Stafford, guys that could catch the ball out of the backfield. But the Lions have a lot of different problems, obviously addressing the cornerback issue with the third pick of the draft. But I think they still have some offensive line problems, and until you fix that, it doesn't matter who you get in terms of skill position players. It all starts in the trenches, right?
Right, exactly. You know, and it's kind of, where do they go from here type of deal. I know Patricia is a new coach in the league, but will they allow him to have another subpar year this year and underachieve? And Matt Stafford, is this one of those do or die seasons for him, Brendan?
You know, I think Matt Stafford's a guy that's going to go really underappreciated in NFL history if he continues with Detroit. Because you look at what Stafford's done. Yeah, he's battled a lot of injuries, but he's got a rocket arm. He's one of, a handful of guys to ever throw for 5,000 yards.
True.
I think Mike Detillier said it to us best, was that you could see a situation where if Stafford somehow got out of his contract and the Saints don't take a quarterback and really don't find that the replacement option and Breeze retires, maybe Stafford's a guy that comes down to the bayou. It's obviously he's not Drew Brees, but you're still getting a quarterback that's pretty accurate. Stafford's got a big arm. So I think for Matt Stafford, it's about a change of scenery more than anything. You can make the case that a new head coach, a new system, that's enough of a change of scenery. But I think for Stafford, it's about time. And the Lions really have to start figuring that process out as well, because going back to starting in the trenches, Stafford's had bad O-lines. And the older a quarterback gets, if that offensive line doesn't get better, he's just going to take more hits, and it's not going to result well for you.
Right. And, the one thing about Stafford, man, he had weapons like Johnson years ago, those guys got close, but when it came to the Superdome, of course, we vanquished those guys, but they never really had a chance to have a consistent offense. Does that make sense? A consistent
Yeah,
offense
and
would kind of take them over the hump.
you kind of go back through Detroit history and you kind of feel that, right? They haven't had complete offenses. I know a lot of Detroit people would obviously compare Calvin Johnson's retirement early to maybe the greatest running back to ever play the game, right? In Barry Sanders. And that's my opinion. Barry's career got ended short because, man, what's the point? What's the point of continuing to do it year after year after year? And I think Calvin Johnson kind of got in that same boat. And they've had one or two like superstar talents. And then you throw Matt Stafford with Calvin Johnson in a top tier quarterback at one point in his career, and they haven't put all the pieces around. And if you're a Detroit fan, it's got to be disappointing. It just has to be. So what domino has to fall for the rest of it to get going? And in my opinion, it's moving on from Matt Stafford at the end of the season.
All right. So Brendan believes a change of scenery is good for Matthew Stafford. The Giants are on the clock. Now, this is a team that has really been struggling. They have a new young quarterback, and he showed a lot of good potential last season, man. And so you have to really believe that Gettleman is going to do something with that offensive line, right?
You have to. That was the case for Eli Manning over the years. There's a lot of people that don't want to admit it, so I'll admit it right here on the air. Eli Manning's a Hall of Fame quarterback, and you cannot convince me otherwise. He might not be a first ballot Hall of Fame quarterback, but he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. And you look at his last 5 years, and people could say he probably should have hung it up a little earlier. He didn't have any help. That offensive line was 31st or 32nd year after year after year. And then you saw the struggles for Saquon Barkley as well, even though he's a tremendous talent, one of the best college running backs I've ever got to see. And he's just a massive guy with all the speed in the world. But if you don't have an offensive line, it's not going to matter. Like I said earlier, the DeAndre Swift pick for Detroit, if you don't have an O-line, it doesn't matter. And especially when you're talking about having two really talented guys in Danny Dimes at quarterback and Saquon Barkley at running back,
right?
You have to build around them. You have to. And I'm not talking about the outside. A ton of people criticize the Saints pick in the first round, but you start within and you go out. That's how you have to build your rosters, because if it's not strong inside, you're not going to be able to get it to those guys who are outside. And I know this might be hard to believe for a lot of people watching, but when I started playing football for the first time, I was an offensive lineman. I used to be a bigger kid, bigger dude.
Wow.
Yeah, I was a starting center when I was in like middle school, going into high school. And
get out of here.
That's what you're taught from that age, is you have to start here so we can get it to everybody else. So I'm a firm believer. It all starts in the trenches. And so, yeah, and I said it yesterday, it's not a sexy pick to go get an offensive lineman in the first round. It's just not, because you want that big play guy. You want that guy to root for, put the jersey on and go, man, I want to rep a guy who's going to score 10 touchdowns a year at the receiver spot or at the running back spot. But those hogs, they get it done. They're the difference. And I think for a lot of these teams, you see talent on the outside in the backfields, and it all comes down to that offensive line. We even talked about the Tampa Bay Bucks. That's a problem for Tampa Bay this year. So they got a lot to prove, because you can get Brady, you can get Gronk, you can have awesome weapons on the outside. But if you can't keep that quarterback upright and you can't give the running back holes, it's not going to matter.
Right. So the Giants went ahead and selected a safety, Xavier McKinney. He's one of the top that was still on the board. They do need some help on the defensive backfield end as well. So now the Patriots are on the clock. But you brought up some good points there, Brendan. Do you stay in the mode of satellite guys, or do you work inside out? The Saints philosophy has always been that let's get a good prospect on the offensive line. You look at guys, I repeat this again, Jari Evans, Nix. You look at Teron Armstead. You look at Ramczyk. Remember how many people were scratching their heads with Ramczyk? right? How many people thought Andrews Pete, and that's still debatable to some of the people in the Who Dat Nation, right? But it's a good tandem that they have with Armstead as well as Pete together, right? So will we see that same type of tandem with McCoy and Ruiz? So that's something to be able to see. So looks like the pick has been made. The Patriots selected safety Kyle Duggar. He has a great name. I like that name. Kyle is an awesome name, man. I like this kid already. I'm not going to root for the Patriots. I might root for him. So,
that's a small school to come out of to be a top pick too. Lenoir-Rhyne. That is a small little Division II school.
Right.
So go small schools. I love seeing that small FCS schools, D2 guys. It's great to see them, work their way into being in the NFL, because it's a struggle for sure.
Yeah. And we have Mr. Bob Rose of the Bayou Blitz and Saints News Network writer. How you doing, Bob? What's going on, buddy?
I'm probably as exhausted as you guys are, but excited to be here. Intrigued at what's going to happen tonight and through tomorrow.
Right.
I'm pulling my hair out at Saints social media.
Well, I've already done that for you, Bob. So you keep a hold of yours, please. Somebody has to have some good luck. You and Brendan has got the nice coal black. How you get your hair so coal black, Brendan?
Yeah, that's my mom.
That's genetic, right?
I know you've met my mother. I know you haven't met my father, but my dad lost his hair a long time ago. So fingers crossed. They say it comes from the mom's side of the family, but I definitely got my mom's Asian hair, and it's great. Right now, I need a haircut. I haven't seen a barber, and I can't tell you how long, because everything going on is starting to get to that point where it's a little too long to really do anything with. But it's not short enough.
About barbers, and you don't make me come through this screen. Y'all talk about barbers all the time. Bob always, hey, Carla, I need a haircut, man. That's all I have to say. All right, come on. All right, Paul T. Yeah, Lenoir-Rhyne is in Hickory, North Carolina.
Yeah, man, that's right up my neck of the woods. I know exactly where that is. That's not far at all from where I call college football.
Yeah, they have some good basketball players came out of that program too, right?
Yeah, it's a little school. When I say little, it is little. It kind of in the middle of nowhere, and that's kind of what Hickory is. But Hickory's a fun little environment. They got a nice minor league ballpark out there as well. But no, Lenoir-Rhyne in Division II athletics, especially here in the Southeast, is typically up there as one of the better spots across sports, particularly basketball, like you said.
Yeah, Lutheran school. Wow. Okay, awesome. So, Bob, we have been chatting up a little bit. We talked about what's going on the board. The Giants selected a safety. One of the guys that you profiled, Michael Pittman, went off the board as well. Yeah. You saw that. Now the Dolphins are on the clock. They have needs. Tell us, do you believe they're going defensive tackle, running back, defensive end?
Wow, they could use any of them. It wouldn't surprise me if the Dolphins went defensive tackle here. There's still a couple good ones on the board. Justin Matabuk from Texas A&M, and of course Ross Blacklock is still there from TCU. Running back is a Miami need, in my opinion. And with DeAndre Swift coming off of the board to the Lions a few picks ago, you're looking at, if Miami goes running back here, J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, I think would be a great fit in Miami. And Miami actually at pick 39 was one of the spots that I was hoping that the Saints would target to move into the second round, given the activity that Miami had in the first round, and they still have another second round pick later tonight. Miami does. So I mean,
the team.
having said that,
I know the Saints have been trying to get back up there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. I'm sorry to interrupt. It wouldn't surprise me if Miami stuck with all the draft picks that they had. I mean, they earned these picks by basically having a fire sale of their talent last year, and have made a complete commitment to rebuilding that roster from the ground up. You could see a quarterback here too. You could see Jalen Hurts come off the board here, or even Jacob Eason. At this point, you're comparing Eason's physical abilities with Hurts' athleticism and intangibles. But Ryan Fitzpatrick played okay for them last year. But we know what Fitzpatrick is. I mean, he's a caretaker quarterback. So if your franchise is gonna make a commitment to rebuilding, you've got to get a quarterback at some point. So it wouldn't surprise me if Miami went quarterback here too.
All right. Paul T, we're going to get Bob to answer your question. Hold on 1 second. The Panthers, they took your boy from Penn State, the big guy, Mr. Yerda Gross. How you feel about that?
He's a great player. I mean, I love him as a player. Obviously, love the school that he came from. Hate the program that drafted him, though. He could give Ryan Ramczyk and Teron Armstead's fits, in that Carolina system. Like you said, he's a big boy, more of a traditional 4-3 defensive end, which is kind of why that I had him outlined for a potential Saints pick too, if he were still on the board. But Gross Matos has outstanding athleticism as well. He has nice bend around the edge. It's a good pickup for Carolina. He's one whale of a defensive player.
Yeah, that's what really concerned me. Carolina getting this kid. They are rebuilding, and you look at somebody like him for the next several years down the line, man. That's going to be how do we handle them, right? Like how we had to handle Julius Peppers with those guys for many years. So good pick for those guys. And Miami is still on the clock. Pick has not come in as of yet. So Paul T wanted to know, who is the sleeper linebacker, in Bob's opinion, that the Saints can nab in the 3rd round? Or
great question.
Move up to the 2nd round.
That's a great question, Paul, and thank you so much again for tuning in with us and bearing with us tonight. I don't know if you can call Logan Wilson a sleeper anymore, because he's been talked about so much that you can't really term him as underrated or sleeper anymore. But Logan Wilson from Wyoming is my favorite linebacker that's left on the board. Another guy I really, really like is Malik Harrison from Ohio State. He's a bigger linebacker that Sean Payton likes to have in our system. And then if you go at the opposite end of the spectrum, a developmental prospect, but one heck of an athlete is Davion Taylor from Colorado. So keep an eye on him. I know that there's a lot of scouts that's high on Davion Taylor because of his athletic potential. A couple other guys to watch, coming off the board, if not in the 2nd round, then certainly in the 3rd, would be Willie Gay Jr. from Mississippi State and Akeem Davis Gaither from Appalachian State. Small school product, but definitely big production. And I know for a fact NFL scouts love him too.
I think the thing when it comes to the linebacker spot, Bob, Taylor is a really interesting prospect. And you mentioned a developmental guy, and having to go through and read some of his bios and how he came up. It was really interesting. He missed a lot of games in high school due to his religious beliefs, playing on Fridays and Saturdays. So he really didn't get a chance to do that. He even qualified for a state championship in track and wasn't able to participate because it was a Saturday. And then got his mom's blessing at 18 to go play college football and kind of change his beliefs a little bit, or at least have the ability to if he chose to, so he could pursue that. And he went to a junior college and then goes to Colorado. And the thing about him is, at worst, he's a really good special teams player. At best, he's a starter in the league. And there's really no in between. You're getting a guy that's going to be on your roster. It just depends how much of a jump or how much of a reach do you want to take on a guy that you know is going to be a project. But he's definitely one of the more intriguing guys left in this draft at that position.
Oh, no question about it. And like you said, Brendan, if you're in a position where you can take a developmental guy, and I kind of think that the Saints are, remember, everybody has outlined linebacker as a position of need for them. And while I don't disagree with that, and this is a big if, but if Alex Anzalone and Kiko Alonso can stay healthy, you figure they're going to line up with the Mario Davis at linebacker, and that's one heck of a linebacking core. The issues are Alonso and Anzalone have not been able to stay healthy, and those two, along with the Mario Davis and a very versatile backup in Craig Robertson, are all free agents next year. Now, I expect the team to make a big push to sign at least Davis, and I know the coaches like Anzalone as well. But thinking that you're going to potentially lose at least a couple of those linebackers, and the fact that Caden Ellis, last year's 7th-round draft pick, they really like him, and so do I. But he's largely unproven. So if you can get a guy like Davion Taylor or Akeem Davis-Gaither, you can afford to maybe not give him a redshirt year, but have him develop a little bit behind those guys that we just mentioned. And then possibly step in and compete for a starting role next year.
Well, I love that you brought up the name Craig Robertson, because remember a couple years ago for the Saints defense, he was the guy, and then hasn't seen as many defensive snaps over the years, but you can't take away his production on special teams, and he's such a big part of that special teams unit. I think having to see him play more on the defensive side of the ball really takes something away from the special teams unit. So Sean Payton alluded to it last night to the media after the first round pick was made, that they need to address the linebacker spot in one way or another. The key to that is one way or another. They could do it through the draft, but what John was saying before you were on the air, Bob, is that there are plenty of guys in free agency that are sitting at home, and they might not be the most ideal guys, but guys that are veterans and bring some experience that you could potentially plug and play. And a name he brought up was Alec Ogletree as a possibility. And also, there's some linebackers available. And now that you have Larry Warford, whose future's kind of up in the air right now, could you potentially just flip Warford for a linebacker? I don't know.
That's certainly possible. Obviously, as you know, somebody would have to take on Warford's salary. But, Warford is still a high-quality interior lineman. And I think in serious risk of a potential cap casualty because of the high salary that he does carry. And if the Saints do choose to release him rather than trade him, they will save themselves about $7.5 million to the cap this year. And Alec Ogletree is a great call out too by you. And I think you said you and John talked about it before. Ogletree is a veteran guy, more of a run stopper than a pass coverage guy at this stage. But he's very seasoned. He can run an NFL defense. And I talked about him during free agency, during the prime of free agency signings as a potential pickup too. So Alec Ogletree, if they don't pick up a linebacker in the draft, that they can afford to give some playing time to right away, Ogletree is definitely a guy to keep an eye on.
I like Ogletree.
If you're just tuning in with Brendan and myself, we want to thank you for joining us at the Saints News Network draft coverage again tonight. Last two picks came across the board while Brendan and I were talking linebackers. The Dolphins at pick 39 picked Robert Hunt, guard tackle offensive lineman from Louisiana Lafayette. And at 40, the Houston Texans picked up defensive tackle Ross Blacklock from TCU. And the Cleveland Browns swung a deal with the Indianapolis Colts at pick 41. So the Colts pick is now in, has not been announced yet.
Well, I know Blacklock was one of your guys throughout this process. He's officially off the board. I want to go back to these live comments, Bob. You have Paul T., who's hung out with us for a little bit. I believe he was here yesterday as well. Who is Logan Wilson's game similar to, in your opinion?
Sorry, I'm not ignoring you. Jonathan Taylor was just drafted by the Colts at pick 41. Logan Wilson, probably one of the big comparisons to him, I would say, would be AJ Klein. Logan is a heck of an instinctive run defender. He's a better athlete than what Klein was. We obviously know what Klein was capable of doing here in New Orleans. I think Klein got a bad rap for his pass coverage. I think he was better in pass coverage duties than a lot of people gave him credit for. But Logan is definitely more of a run stopper and a zone coverage defender. He does have nice athleticism to match up with some tight ends and running backs, but he just he needs to show a little bit better instinctively when he's in man coverage. But yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I'd compare Logan Wilson probably to AJ Klein.
And the other thing about Klein, I don't think people give enough credit for, is before he got to New Orleans, his ability to step in and run the defense with the Carolina Panthers, stepping in for Luke Kuechly. And I think you hit the nail on the head. His coverage skills, maybe not as good as people were hoping for, but certainly not. He gets a bad rap for it. And I think you look back at his time in New Orleans and in Carolina, and he's a really quality linebacker in this league. And if he wasn't, he wouldn't be on his way up to Buffalo, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. I think Klein really gave a boost to this linebacking core when he first signed on from Carolina in 2017. Demario Davis, when he signed, Davis took the linebacking unit to the next level. But Klein gave us better linebacking play prior to Davis than we had seen in a number of years on this defense, really.
So Taylor's finally off the board.
Yeah, that's a good.
Swift go before Taylor.
What's that?
Did it surprise you to see Swift go before Taylor?
It didn't. If I was making the call for most teams, I would have taken Swift before Taylor too. I had Swift rated as a higher prospect. Excuse me. Swift is a far better pass receiver. That's not necessarily a knock on Jonathan Taylor because Wisconsin just doesn't throw the ball a lot to their running backs. But Swift is a much more refined pass receiver at this stage, and the fact that he's going to Detroit, he's going to be a welcome weapon for Matthew Stafford. Taylor is more athletic than a lot of, certainly a lot faster than a lot of running backs that we've seen out of Wisconsin. So he's going to get his opportunity, with Indianapolis and Phillip Rivers, who we know likes to use the running back in the passing game. He's going to get an opportunity to showcase what kind of receiving ability he has. But yeah, during the draft process, there just wasn't a lot to see on Jonathan Taylor as a pass receiver. So that's why I had Swift rated higher.
I think I'm with you. I think Swift is more of the prototypical current NFL back that can do a little bit of everything. I know Kyle and I talked about it right when that pick was made, and I said obviously a lot of people were calling for the potential replacement for Alvin Kamara if the Saints wanted to go that way. And I think Swift, though not the same player, it was a solid comparison. And I think Swift is able to catch the ball really well out of the backfield. He's an underrated runner between the tackles. And he brings a lot to that Detroit Lions offense. But back to what Kyle and I talked about, if that offensive line is not fixed, if it's not any more than the pass job that it's been over the years in Detroit, it's not going to matter. They have a lot of issues. They have a lot of things to fix. But having a playmaker like Swift, does a couple things. It puts people in the seats, and it gives you promise for the next couple of years. So I really like the pick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see a question pop up. I don't see who asked it though. I apologize. I have a hard time seeing the questions as they pop up. But we're being asked, is Taylor a more complete running back?
Yeah, that was a question from me, Bob.
Oh, well, hi, Kyle. Well, you can answer the question. No. And Brendan and I were just talking about this, and he made some great points. I think as a pure running back, Taylor certainly has a higher volume of touches based off of his collegiate career. And therefore more tread on the tires too, which is something to consider. So Taylor is probably the more instinctive running back. But both Brendan and I were talking about how we like the versatile skill set that DeAndre Swift can bring to an offense because he's so much more advanced as a pass receiver.
Okay, we have another question, guys. Let's see. It's a question and a comment. Debo the God, T. Higgins, Swift are all decent linebackers, and they're gone. T. Higgins and Swift and all the decent linebackers are gone. I guess that's what he's saying. I guess Debo doesn't think we have a chance. Let's see. Debo also said all the decent wide receivers are gone. Do you guys agree?
Debo, I don't. But thank you. Thank you for your question. Van Jefferson, a guy we all really like, a very, very refined route runner with underrated athleticism and good height. Laviska Shenault is a speed guy, who's a powerful running back as well as elusive in the open field. He could be used all over the formation. And KJ Hill was a very productive slot wide out for Ohio State. If you like bigger guys, Brian Edwards from South Carolina or Tyler Johnson from Minnesota were both very productive wide receivers too for their respective colleges. And those are all guys that I would expect that we hear their names tonight. If you like a smaller guy in the mold of, say, a Deontay Harris, then you're going to like KJ Hamler from Penn State. Hamler's a little guy, not much of an outside receiver, but he's a guy that you can use as a runner out of the backfield and in the slot, and he is absolutely electric in the open field as well.
Okay, so Jacksonville is back on the board, and they have had a mess with their defensive end, their star defensive end, man. A Twitter war out in the open with the son of the owner. I thought that was kind of much. Not as much for the player, but the son of the owner responding to it, Yeah. That's what was kind of odd. Brendan, how did you see that? Oh, Shenault is off the board.
Yes, he is.
He is going to the Jaguars.
Hey, the Jags needed help. Needed some weapons. This is Minshew's team now, right? So you gotta have some guys to get the ball to. But to your question, Kyle, about the whole Twitter thing, the only thing I'll really say, and you being in the business world, I know that you'll say it as well. And this is just out there for anybody of any age. Just be careful what you put on social media, and don't respond to people, and don't be unnecessary. That's in work. That's your employers. That's everything. Right? We don't think about it now. We live in a world where social media is just this thing you pop out on your phone, you scroll through, you post whatever. No, every employer ever will look through what you've done, what you've posted. And especially if you're the son of an owner of a franchise, you don't want to be going at it with the star player of a team because you're just going to turn them away from the franchise. And that's what happened. Just be smart before you hit send. That's with anything. That's all I got. Just be smart before you hit send. Proofread it. Ask yourself, am I going to regret this? Is there any way this could be taken a different way? So
yeah, definitely.
Leave it at that.
I've had some of those issues in my lifetime, but also, all right, guys. Shenault goes off the board. Shenault had some injury concerns, right? But do you believe Minshew can be able to utilize his talents?
Yeah, I absolutely do. Laviska Shenault is one of my favorite players in this draft. I love his backstory. Well, I don't love it because he had to overcome a lot. He and his family had to overcome a lot to really get anywhere in life, let alone to where they are now. But Shenault, I compared Shenault a lot to Deebo Samuel for the San Francisco 49ers. He's not the biggest guy as far as height and stature wise, but he is, he's built, he's strong, he's physical. And that's actually one of the reasons why he's had some injury concerns because he does take a pounding because he tries to dish it out as much as he takes it. Those injuries that he suffered through college He, for the most part, he toughed his way through. He didn't miss a lot of games, but he was dinged up a lot of time. But I'll tell you, when this young man is healthy, he is a playmaker. The Jaguars are getting themselves a good pick, and again, a guy that they can use both in the slot and outside, as well as a runner out of the backfield. Colorado used him in a lot of goal line situations as a Wildcat quarterback.
Really? Oh,
Mm-hmm.
Didn't know about that. I like his hands. I like the guy can catch, man. And you give me a good guy who knows how to catch the ball, we can work on route running and everything else a little bit later. All right. So, Brendan, Debo, the guy, has a question. What do you think about Ruiz being the first pick of the Saints? And did you ever think we would need an offensive line person to help out? You want to take that, Brent?
Well, this goes to the very top of the show, right? When we first came on the air, we talked about Ruiz and some pieces that both John Hendrix and I had written over the last 24 hours, maybe even less. Yes, for sure, less than 24 hours because of the pick. And I said, once you took a step back and you got over the initial shock of it, because it seemed like in that situation, the Saints were in play to get Patrick Queen. Once you took that shock away, it made a lot of sense. And I said, one of the biggest reasons it made sense was the cap number that Larry Warford has this season, and going into next year, the Saints have to deal with the issue of having that great 2017 draft class. They're all due new contracts. So if you're able to dump some of that money off, whether it be this year to get a couple key guys to fill in some spots, Bob and I talked about potentially a linebacker position with a guy like Alec Ogletree, if you're able to dump some of the money this year, but absolutely next year you have a little bit more flexibility to renegotiate some of those contracts. So you get Warford out, you get a pretty quality young guy on a rookie contract to fill in. So it makes a lot of sense to me. Did I ever think we needed O-line help? I thought depth was more the issue than anything. But once, like I said, once you started diving into all of it, it made a lot of sense to pick. I wouldn't be saying this 18 hours ago. I think 18 hours ago, Bob, Carla, and I were on this, and our faces said it all. We were just absolutely shocked by the pick. But now that you've had some time to digest it, it makes a lot of sense.
All right. Before we get to you, Paul, the Chicago Bears took tight end, your boy Commit. How do you feel about that, Bob?
Well, and we talked about it last night. We all figured that Cole Kmet would be the first tight end off of the board at about this range. So this is a good value for him. It is a good pickup for Chicago. I know that they signed Jimmy Graham, and Saints fans are very familiar with Jimmy. But the Jimmy is not nearly the athlete that he used to be. He's certainly on the downside of his career. So the Bears' logic is probably about the same as what I think the Saints' logic might be if New Orleans grabs a tight end. New Orleans has an older guy in Jared Cook who carries a high contract number and a contract that will expire at the end of the year. I think that the Bears signed Jimmy Graham to a one-year contract himself. And again, he's not nearly the receiver he once was. Brendan talked about how much two tight end alignments help out a lot of quarterbacks too. So Kmet is a plug and play guy. If you're going to look at him as the top tight end in this draft class, and he is because he's the first one off the board, he doesn't compare, in my opinion, to the other top tight ends in other draft classes, and certainly last year's draft class. He would have been mid-round at best. But Kmet is a plug and play guy, who does have a high upside. Is a run pass blocker and a guy that you can leave on the field in every offensive alignment.
All right. Paul T wants to know, do the Saints plan to move McCord to guard or make Ruiz a guard? Well, I can answer that one. So I was on with the press conference with Sean Payton, and he likes the flexibility of both of the guys, Paul. And it seems as though he's going to have those guys compete. Even Warford, he singled Warford out. He said, yeah, Warford has to come in. He's going to have to compete for a job. Well, and there might be a possibility, don't hold me to this, but Warford may get dealt. We don't know. Mm-hmm. So there's always that floating around out there. But when you look at Ruiz and you look at McCoy, both of those guys have played guard before in their careers and center. The flexibility having both of them to be able to play those slots can only do wonders for the Saints. Now, McCoy did a great job last season as the center for the team in his first year, right? And you look at the intelligence of Ruiz, he can do the same thing. So it's going to be one of those, what do you say, a good scenario, a good bad scenario to have versus having to wonder who would you plug into those areas. Now, if we have a shortened training camp type of season, you may want to stick with who? McCoy, right? And allow Ruiz to be able to grow and just plug him in at the guard position. So that's my thoughts on there. Anything that you guys would like to elaborate on?
No, I couldn't agree more. And Paul, I absolutely think that the plan, as soon as that pick went in for Ruiz, that the plan was immediately that either he or McCoy were gonna be slotted into that right guard position. This is no knock on Larry Warford. Larry's been one heck of an offensive lineman during his time in New Orleans, but we've seen his struggles down the stretch. And obviously the coaches were paying attention if they're going to make a move like this. Listen, the Saints love versatility in their offensive linemen. We have Andrus Peat, who has the ability to play either tackle spot in a pinch. We have Ryan Ramczyk, who can play either tackle, either right or left tackle. And Nick Easton is a backup guard that can also fill in at center. Ruiz and McCoy's abilities to play guard, and like Kyle pointed out, Sean Payton is going to want both of them to compete at both spots. So we're going to see a lot of different offensive line combinations, assuming we do get a preseason. There's just so many directions that this could take. And now Warford, like Brendan and I were talking about earlier, you now have Warford as a valuable commodity if you need a veteran. As it stands right now, if the preseason is going to be abbreviated, you're going to want a veteran to start off that season. If not, Warford certainly is a potential cap casualty. Or like Kyle said, he could be dealt too, to kind of dump part of that salary and maybe bring in future draft picks.
Right. Good analysis. Brendan, this one is for you. 9 times out of 10, Debo saw Pete on his back foot being pushed around last season. Not Warford, but Loomis is sniffing something. So I like that, Debo.
I'll comment on the beginning.
All right. So go ahead, Brent.
I think the big thing with that is you definitely saw Pete struggle at times throughout the year. I think one of the biggest things you have to remember is he was playing hurt, and I know that's not an excuse for everybody, but he was. When it comes to Warford, I will point out specifically 2 scenarios that were big moments in the Saints season in which Warford got beat. The first being week 2 against the Rams when Drew Brees tore his UCL in his thumb. It was Warford who got beat by Aaron Donald, not Andrus Peat. And then you look at the playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. The Saints are driving, sack fumble. Drew Brees loses the ball. There was some concern. Maybe it was the grip on the football, but who got beat up the middle on that? It was Larry Warford. And you talk about 2 moments in that really changed the course of the Saints season, both laying on Larry Warford.
Right. And don't forget the Falcons game, guys. Those Falcons were coming inside. The speed guys were coming inside at Warford, and he did not hold his ground a few times. The first game, that we lost. But I'm just going to say, even though he made the Pro Bowl, right, which was shocking to me, that he still had some deficiencies there that were very glaring this season. Last season, not so glaring. This season, a little bit more glaring. Plus, I think the Saints were kind of, how do I say this, concerned about his weight issue this season. Okay? All right. We got another question, Bob. Paul T, he plays fantasy football. What rookie offensive player should I jump on in the early rounds of fantasy football? I think that's a little early right now to talk about that, Paul, because you got to see where these guys are going, right? And what systems they're in to be able to kind of give you a good feel for that. So looks like LSU guy went off the board. The Browns selected Delpit, which is an excellent fit for the Browns, in my opinion. How do you guys feel about Delpit going to the Browns?
I agree. It's an excellent pickup for Cleveland. Grant Delpit is an outstanding safety, a great instinctive center fielder, a potential playmaker on that back end. With the athleticism to cover a lot of different types of receivers in the slot, if you ask him to take on that role. I actually feel for Grant Delpit a little bit, and Mike Detillier has talked a lot about this in the last couple of days. Most of LSU's players this past season played the best football of their lives, but not Grant Delpit. Delpit's best season was in 2018. He was nicked up a little bit last year. Part of the reason why he fell in this draft. If Delpit would have come out last year, he was undoubtedly a number one draft choice.
Yeah, definitely. Delpit also, I know some families who know him very well. He's a good kid. He comes from a good family, solid family. Going up to Cleveland, new coach, new regime right now. I think they have a pretty good defense, but they're growing. I think Delpit is going to be a good addition to that program.
Another safety just came off of the board too, guys. Tampa Bay grabbed Antoine Winfield.
Okay, Antoine Winfield. His dad played in the NFL. He's a Houston boy as well. So congratulations to him. Mm-hmm. And let's see, we're going to bring you in, Carla.
Hey, Carla. Hi, how are you?
Good. How you been making out?
Making out pretty good. Been busy again today. I had a ministry call earlier on Zoom. I had something that was pre-existing. So how are you guys doing? Any word on a trade up?
No trade ups at the moment. Nothing at the moment, guys. All right, Delpit is a beast. Debo, the guy you went on, you were talking about Pete was gone as okay. He didn't have much of a drop off as Clapp and Easton. Interesting. How do you guys feel about that comment?
Well, what happened was, when Pete got injured in that first Atlanta game, like Debo pointed out, it was Clapp that stepped in, and I actually thought that Clapp played pretty well through the end of that Falcons game. Brendan, you said earlier, in fact, you and Kyle both said it, that the main problem in that Falcons game was pressure over Warford's side, not so much Pete and Clapp. And then the next week, once it was announced that Pete was going to miss 5 or 6 games with that arm injury, that's when the Saints started activating Nick Easton and immediately put him into the starting lineup. And I think all of us were pleasantly surprised at how well Easton did play, because we were kind of getting down on him because Easton was inactive for most of the first month and a half of the season. But when you're right, Debo, when Easton came in, I know he carries a high salary with him, but he earned some of that similar with the way he played when Pete was out of the lineup. And in fact, he played so well that when Pete came back, there was a strong mumbling that he wasn't going to get his job back. That Sean Payton was going to leave the Easton in.
Yeah. All right. Debo also talks about Antoine Winfield. His dad retired not too long ago. Now his son's being drafted. Yeah. Long life. Paul T wants to know, Bob, what are you drinking?
Coffee. Lots and lots of coffee.
Yeah, he's not on that sauce, Paul.
Bob, we talked about that. We're both coffee junkies, but I actually have fresh juice. It's in a blue cup though, but I'm actually drinking fresh squeezed juice.
I got some canes, guys. Well, I had some canes. I put some Gatorade in.
What are you drinking, Brendan?
Yeah, I'm a coffee person. I managed a coffee shop for over a year, so I'm a little bit of a coffee snob. That was one of my jobs right out of college, and right now I'm actually Cafe Du Monde. You go to the World Market, you can get their coffee in a big tin. So I had to have a little bit of New Orleans with me out here, so that's what I'm drinking today.
Well, that's great. I love coffee as well. Kyle, you got to get on the bandwagon.
No, I got off coffee, guys. Coffee put hair on my head, so I had to get off that. So, all right, Jerry, Broncos took KJ Hamler. Wow, wide receiver. He's a good guy. Good guy. Broncos are doing pretty well in the draft this year, guys. Any comments on what they're doing right now?
And I like Hamler as a player. I've said that a couple of times. But what's interesting is, remember, the Broncos grabbed Jerry Jeudy, the wide receiver from Alabama, in the first round. And they already have Cortland Sutton, and Deshaun Hamilton is a solid number 3, number 4 receiver. Hamler is going to make an immediate impact for Denver as a kick returner, no doubt. Hamler was the best kick returner in the Big Ten and one of the better ones throughout the NCAA. And again, since Denver now has Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton on the outside, and Deshaun Hamilton is actually better from the slot anyway, so that could free him up to be in the slot a little bit more. With those 3 receivers, that allows Denver's offense to move Hamler all around. Rather than KJ Hamler is not the kind of guy you want as a number 1 wide receiver because of his size. A lot of teams are going to be able to shut him down or contain him. But when you have a receiving core that has Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Deshaun Hamilton, Hamler is a guy that they could get in open space a lot now.
All right. So the Dirty Girls are on the clock. Debo wants to know, all right, Debo says one of the worst or most uneventful Saints draft of all time. We'll come back to that one, Debo. Too funny, man. We got a new comment.
It could change quick.
Yeah. Alex Williams said, why a center after center after center? Well, we kind of touched on this earlier, Alex. This guy has flexibility not only to play the center position, but also the guard, and they drafted him to replace Larry Walford. That's the bottom line. So either it's going to be Reese playing that guard position, or it's going to be Eric McCoy sliding over to play that position. All right. Paul T., do you think Latavius Murray would get to run more often? Why do they refrain from giving him the ball, right? Brendan, Carla, you guys want to take that one?
I mean, it's an interesting point. If you look on really early into the season last year, Latavius Murray wasn't getting a whole lot of touches. And you look at once Kamara went down, obviously his workload had to explode. But I don't remember the stat off my head, but it was if Latavius got something like 10 or more carries per game, 9 times out of 10, he was at 50 or more yards for the Saints last year. So that's an excellent question. I think a lot of it had to do with what the Saints did with Taysom Hill, especially after Drew got back. Being able to run the ball a little bit and being able to create offense in a really unique way. I think that really took away from the traditional running styles that we saw with the Ingram and Kamara backfield over the years. And that's something that the Saints have to work out, because I'm with some of these comments. I saw another one that came through that was about the Saints in playoff games throwing the ball a little too much, getting a little pass happy. I'm with you guys. I was a huge Mark Ingram fan, huge Mark Ingram support. quarter well before the Pro Bowl years, and I thought it was just about getting him touches. I think Latavius Murray, while not the same running back, he's a guy that just has to touch the ball. So I'd like to see it a little bit more as well, but I think a lot of it has to do with Taysom Hill's role next year.
All right, Debo, you say the Saints trashed Murray when Kamara wasn't getting 30 yards per game. We got to do better. Yeah, we got to do better all along. And I think also one of the things that and Bob, you may correct me if I'm wrong, Warford was a great guard when he was with the Lions in the running game, right? That was one of the main reasons why the Saints brought him in, not just for his pass blocking abilities, but the ability to run the football behind him.
Yeah, you're right, Kyle. When the Saints first got Warford from Detroit, it was primarily for his run blocking ability. If he had a weakness, it was actually a weakness with some interior power rushers, which we actually had seen that kind of issue, especially last year with Larry Warford and the Saints. Now, what surprised a lot of us about Warford when he first came to New Orleans was his so-called lack of pass blocking ability was a little bit overstated. He turned out to be a better pass blocker than we all anticipated, at least in that first year or so with New Orleans. It was just last year. And Kyle, you and I pointed it out a couple of times during the course of the season on the Bayou Blitz podcast. Warford's feet in a lot of games, Warford's feet just weren't right. And you pointed out several times how he was having trouble, with lateral movements. And those inside guys, they were just beating him. Those defensive tackles were just beating him to the inside down the stretch last year.
Well, two things. Weight was the issue, and we heard that from one of our good friends in the industry today, right? Weight was a major concern about Warford, and that wasn't addressed by Warford. Okay, that means he didn't lose the weight. So therefore, that gives you a lot more pressure on not moving your feet, right? He's not as young any longer, right? And that makes a difference. And I think I'm gonna pull up that dancing routine that Ruiz was doing earlier. If you guys hadn't seen that, man, you can see how if you're young, you have good feet. Carla, remember when we had good feet at 35?
I remember those field shows.
Yeah, man.
Left feet too.
I can't jump like I used to, Carla, so.
Well, I mean, you had to jump. I didn't have to jump. I just had to dance on the If for anybody who didn't know, Kyle was a drum major, so
man.
I wasn't jumping. I was playing and dancing.
Yeah, but she was a great clarinetist, man. All right. John Smith. Let's look at you. John says, do the Saints give AK an extension? Ooh. Caller, do they give him an extension?
Well, I think you guys know how I feel about that. I think they should. And I've still been throwing around thoughts in my mind, and also talking to people that I really respect as it relates to football. And the numbers are coming in. I know, Cal, on yesterday, I think you said between 4 and 8 million.
I think that was John saying those numbers.
John did?
Yeah.
Well, my husband said between 8 and 12 million. And so I think they need to pay him. I think we all agree that he wasn't worth 100 million. We all agreed on that. But I think that we should give him an extension, and I think we should keep our team intact as much as we can. I think that being healthy and healing from that injury he had all last year, he should be more productive this year.
Right. All right. The Dirty Birds selected defensive end Marlon Davidson. Any intel on him, Brendan?
I'm going to pass that one to Bob.
Okay, Bob.
I don't have a lot. He is Davidson's a bigger defensive end with decent bend around the edge. I'm going to pull out our cheat guide, Mike Detilier's draft guide. to see what we can dig up. But yeah, Davidson was honestly not on my radar when I was doing different draft profiles. And one of the reasons for that is, as we all know, guys, Tennessee football is not nearly the program that it once was. Even though our own Alvin Kamara came from there, they just aren't a perennial contender anymore like they were. And yeah, what's funny is I don't see him in Mike's draft guide.
So that means the Falcons were stretching again, right?
I mean, clearly they are remaking their defensive front. They lost what's his name? Oh, what the heck's his name? He was a top pick a couple years ago. Come on, guys, help me out.
You talking about Beasley?
Vic Beasley, yeah, thank you. They lost. They lost Vic Beasley, but they were very active in free agency, signing a couple, and that whole defense basically for Atlanta has to be remade. And honestly, the coaching staff's job, all of them, is on the line. Atlanta has the offensive weapons, at least on paper. You might not like what Atlanta does offensively when the game is on the line, but you can't argue with the offensive production and the numbers they put up. It's the defensive side of the ball that basically ever since that Super Bowl blunder, they have been going downhill every single year. I do not see anything on Davidson.
Don't worry about it. So that means we shouldn't be too concerned.
So, guys, I have a question.
Seahawks get Darrell Taylor. Go ahead, Carla.
I'm sorry. I didn't. I wish I had one of Mike's draft guides, but I don't. And Bobby, seems like you do. But there's a wide receiver that I discovered actually earlier in the season, but I rediscovered him again today, and I was just curious if he might have been in the draft guide. His name is Antonio Gandy Golden,
from Liberty.
Yeah, I graduated from there. So did my husband. Went straight through 3 degrees, but this guy, he's one of the smartest football players that I've seen in quite some time. I mean, very, very cultured. I mean, talented as well. But Liberty, I think this year they went pretty deep as far as winning. But back when they had Turner, they had talent. But this guy, Antonio Gandy Golden, what do you know about him, Bob?
Wide receiver Chase Claypool was just selected by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Wow. I like it.
Yeah, a lot of people did. I mean, he was a combine wonder, but I think he's going to be one of those kids that are better as an NFL player than they were in college. Go back to your question, Carla. The kid from Liberty, ESPN just did a story a little bit earlier about him, as a matter of fact. He has tremendous hands. He's a taller guy, probably more suited for the outside spot than in the slot. But he uses the sideline boundary to his advantage. He has great footwork along the sidelines, and you want to talk about an explosive leaper in traffic. And that's when you're talking about a wide receiver in tight quarters. That's a difference maker every time. When you have a guy that's not afraid to go into traffic and has the athletic ability to leap above the defenders, and his hands are just tremendous.
So how would, I mean, of course, I was thinking Saints, and I wasn't really sure how many people have been really looking at this guy, but I'm thinking, could he be available, or could he work in the scheme of things with Coach Sean Payton?
Yeah, he absolutely could. A guy like that isn't going to give you a lot out of the slot. When he's in the game, you're going to have to move a guy like Emmanuel Sanders or even Michael Thomas into the slot. When you have a purely outside boundary guy there, And he's probably, if he gets drafted tonight, it'll be in the late part of the third round, where of course is where the Saints pick. But more likely, I think he's projected to go late fourth, somewhere through the early part or middle of the fifth round. So he'll be on the board a couple times for the Saints.
Huh. This will be interesting.
I have to speak to Liberty University, getting a chance to cover them a little bit while they were in the Big South Conference before they moved to independent and then on to FBS football, to see how far that program has come since being in the Big South Conference just a number of seasons ago, to see how dominant they can be. It's quite remarkable. And being at Liberty a couple times to call basketball, it is a beautiful campus in Lynchburg. It's beautiful. They have a lot of money to be able to go out and spend and make the renovations and make a lot of things happen fairly quickly. So in that case, you have to tip their hat to them for how quickly they've got things going to be a real FBS program in football and a very successful basketball program as well.
Beautiful. Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I find it ironic, though, that they were preparing for this growth. They literally built, before the program was successful at all, before Turner was the coach, they literally built an arena to host the football games. And they had, what do you call it? I guess a sound room. And they were planning it for ESPN. And we used to laugh and chuckle a bit, but it's coming to pass now. And it's state of the art. It's beautiful.
The one in the basketball center and the Vine Center, their production room up there is next level in the Vine Center. I mean, the Vine Center itself is unreal, where they play basketball, but to see what they do production wise and having a chance to work hand in hand with some of those guys, it's really remarkable.
Yes. So who's celebrating here?
This is Cesar Ruiz, guys. Look at that footwork. All right, guys. Just wanted to show you a little bit of his footwork. But you know what was interesting about Ruiz is that his coach, his offensive line coach, spent some time with the media today. And he talked with us and he talked about how this kid is a fun-loving person. And we saw that firsthand right there, right? But he's a smart kid. He understands the game very well, but he is one of the first guys in there talking about the plays or how to get better, how he can be able to improve himself, Carla. So I think with Ruiz, we have a very good talent.
Yes.
Okay. So the Bears selected cornerback Jalen Johnson. Good pickup there for those guys. Let's see. Paul T. Do the Saints go best player available mode or focus on a particular position, such as linebacker or wide receiver? If you had a chance to listen to Coach Payton and his press conference, guys, you got to listen between the lines sometimes with him. He dropped some nuggets and some clues that he is looking at a linebacker, he is looking at receiver, and he is looking at cornerback as well. So pay attention to those three positions today as well as tomorrow in the draft. I don't know who they address first or which position they would address first, but they usually go with the top rated person in their opinion based upon Jeff Ireland and his crew's scouting. So those are the things that you need to be concerned with when you think about take a look at the Saints. So the Cowboys are on the clock. Let's see. Debo, Cowboys going to draft a good player. The only player falling. Mike Fulton from LSU. They lost Byron Jones. Good point. For that, Debo, you said AK is a top 5 running back. Yeah, I believe he is. He just doesn't be. He's not used correctly to his running style in space. But last season, man, you got to give him some slack, right? He still caught 81 footballs for the team. He was the second leading wide receiver on the Saints squad. His production was hampered because of that leg injury. He never was totally 100%. And you can see it in how he was tentative sometimes. If you ever notice, some of the plays when he used to try to stay in the field of play, he was going out of bounds. If you notice that, so I think Alvin was a little bit more injured than that they gave us the information about him, but also Alvin toughed it through some of that injury for the rest of the season as well. So we have to give him some credit, man. All right. So what we're going to do, we're going to take a little break ourselves, and we should be back in a few minutes. So you guys hang in there. We'll take a little break, and we should be back in around 15 to 20 minutes.
Move it, Caesar. Go guess, go. Let it out. Yeah, see? Yeah, see? Get out.
Tackle is going to be a guard. He's got really quick feet. Zone teams that can get him outside on the move are going to love him.
How about Cesar Ruiz with a nice 508, huh?
Cesar Ruiz is my top interior lineman, right behind.
With the 24th pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, the New Orleans Saints select Cesar Ruiz, center, Michigan.
So there you see the very emotional reaction from Cesar Ruiz. He said a few years ago he was born to play center, and while that is his preference, he would do whatever is needed. And he is going through this draft process with a very, very heavy heart. Who you don't see in the picture there, Cesar Ruiz, is his father, Cesar Edward.
How did it feel going through those linebacker drills with Brett Bielema, the New York Giants former Wisconsin head coach?
Yeah, I actually had a meeting with him last night in the film room, and it went really well. Familiar face here at Wisconsin, and I think that connection is really good.
Did you appreciate his humor? Was there much of that out there?
Yeah, there definitely was some humor, and last night he was cracking jokes while we were drawing up stuff on the board or doing that. But the guy's very professional, and he definitely knows what he's talking about.
Can you share some of the feedback he gave you, spending time with him, about what he likes from you?
Yeah, he likes that my hand usage. I've said it time and time again. Being an undersized edge, I need to have perfect technique because I'm not going to have – my arms definitely aren't as long as these big 6, 7 foot tackles. But he really liked my technique, and there's definitely things to improve upon too.
Taylor has an unusual path to Pac-12 football. Growing up in Magnolia, Mississippi, he played football throughout high school, but was not allowed to play in games on Friday or Saturday night under the lights because of his family's religious beliefs. He was still in the early stages of learning and applying proper techniques and fundamentals in all phases of the game. While his inexperience shows up plenty on tape, he has flashes that show off what he could be capable of in the future. Scout says that he's very coachable and that he's one of Mel Tucker's favorites. At best, he develops into a playmaking starter after 2 or 3 years in the league. At worst, he should be a plus special teams talent fairly quickly. Taylor was also a state champion sprinter and triple jumper, though he misses the state meet his junior year because it was on a Saturday. When Devion turned 18, he received his mother's blessings to change his observance to play college football. He nearly didn't make the team at Kahoma Community College, but wound up becoming a starter during his freshman year. Taylor was rated a 4-star junior college recruit after his second year at Kahoma, and Colorado snatched him up. He started 10 of 12 games played in 2018. Taylor also started 10 of 12 games played as a senior, garnering honorable mention in all Pac-12. For Saints News Network on Sports Illustrated, I am Carla Antoine.
All right, Bob, how are you doing, man?
Not bad, Kyle. I had to jump off for a minute to deal with a diaper change. Something I never thought at 47 years old I'd have to do anymore, but what are you going to do?
Your diaper or
No, I get to that point, man. I'm checking out. I'm not going to be on the air with anybody.
Oh my goodness. Hey, Dr. C.
Yes, sir.
I am so proud of you. That was an excellent video of Taylor.
That was.
Thank you.
All right, Bob, we had some activity, man. Jalen Hurts is off the board and gone to the Philadelphia Eagles. Carson Wentz.
Man, that shocked me. that legit shocked me.
Man, they're not sold on Carson Wentz being long term.
No, I don't think they are. And he really came on towards the latter half of last season after a rocky start. The prior 2 years before that, it wasn't like he was. It wasn't as if he wasn't playing good football. It was that he kept getting injured, which obviously started to raise legitimate questions about his durability. But they went into last season without Foles, so Wentz was the guy, and he stayed. He played, I think, in every game for the first time in his career. But like I said, he got off to a really rocky start. But this pickup of Hurts, I don't get it.
That is, well, all it is, man, he gives them some insurance in case he needs to sit behind Wentz. But if Wentz gets injured or what have you, you have a guy who's mobile. You have a guy who is young, talented, confident young man as well. He handled that situation in Alabama very well with he and Tua. So
we don't see seasoned NFL veterans handle that kind of situation with as much maturity.
Man, I didn't handle that when you tried to get rid of me for Carla, man. So I mean.
I vaguely remember that.
It's painful.
Carla, you're supposed to say no comment. I am not aware of such a transaction.
No, she just came straight out. Say she's aware of it. All right. Anthony had a question. Are the Saints planning to move up into the second round? Anthony, good question. We don't know. But we do know that the Saints have been they made inquiries all yesterday to move up. They made inquiries to try to get back into the first round also yesterday. And they made inquiries to try to move up into the second round. I don't know if they got any nibbles whatsoever. We shall see. And I think that's the same question that you had, JCH. Do the Saints move up or trade up? We shall see, guys. The Bills went ahead and took defensive end AJ Epinesa, and the Ravens are now on the clock. Man, Jerry, I really do appreciate you giving these updates to us.
Yeah,
man.
thank you,
Got to
Jerry.
get you need to be a part of the Saints news crew, man.
It says the Ravens pick is in, actually.
Pick is in. All right.
While we're waiting on that, the previous two questions about trading up. The thing about the Saints is, unlike some other NFL teams, they don't trade up just to trade up. When the Saints make moves to deal up, whether it's in the first round or any round, it's because they're moving for a very specific prospect. A single player that Sean Payton has fell in love with. We saw it with Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year. And that's a perfect example since we're talking about, heading towards the middle rounds now. Gardner-Johnson was projected to be a second-round pick by a lot of people, myself included. I had him going to the Saints in the second round of one of my mock drafts. But Gardner-Johnson started to slip. And what was happening is Sean Payton was talking to different teams in the latter part of the third round and early into the fourth. Is saying, hey, what would it take to move up into your pick? He did get some feedback from different teams. And when Gardner-Johnson slipped to a spot where Payton was willing to surrender and go up and get him, that's when he pulled the trigger. So if the Saints move up, it's very, very specific person, not for a group of people that they hope to be there at pick X or Y.
Good analysis there. Now, the pick is in. All right. The Ravens are on the clock, or we are waiting for Goodell or whomever to announce it. Okay. So after these guys, the next pick will be for the Dolphins. The Dolphins have had a bounty full of picks. And how do you think they're doing so far?
They are J.K. Dobbins to the Ravens. Wow.
J.K. Dobbins.
J.K. Dobbins, like, outstanding running back.
I love his skill.
Ohio State guy. He's going to be running with Mr. Mark Ingram. Well, what does that say for Mark?
Mark handled the situation where he was kind of sharing time, not carries, but sharing time with Alvin Kamara very well, I thought. And, you're talking about, J.K. Dobbins has a skill set a little bit closer to Alvin Kamara's style than Mark Ingram's. Dobbins is a guy that they can move around a little bit, even line him up out wide at receiver, as we saw at Ohio State. Dobbins is also a good between the tackles running back. Ingram is still going to be your thumper in Baltimore. Lamar Jackson is going to be your difference maker, your human joystick, and Dobbins is going to be somewhere in between. You're probably even going to see situations where you're going to see obviously Lamar Jackson in the backfield, but lining up with both Ingram and Dobbins. Something that I didn't think the Saints used nearly enough, using Ingram and Kamara in the same backfield. Because again, you're talking about two different kind of backs here. So I think Dobbins is a good pickup for Baltimore, and it probably doesn't mean anything. Ingram is still going to get the bulk of the carries there.
All right, Paul T. In your opinion, what is more important, a wide receiver or a linebacker in round 3? I think if we have to drop all the way down, the wide receivers in this class, if you really like one of those guys, you got to take them in the 3rd round. Because if you wait any longer, we're hoping for another Marcus Colston. Right? Now, if you really like one of these linebackers, you go linebacker.
Yeah, I agree, and I really do think it's the way it depends the way the draft board shakes out. As far as the guys I like at wide receiver, Van Jefferson, KJ Hill, Brian Edwards, and Tyler Johnson are still out there. But at linebacker, and I said this last night too, this is an underrated linebacking core as far as depth is concerned. There is still 6 to 7 guys at linebacker that I legitimately think can come in and contribute for the Saints right away. Now, we saw a run on wide receivers earlier in the round, in the 2nd round, and that cut into the depth of this receiving draft a little bit. So it depends the way your draft board shakes out. If there's another run on receivers, like you said, Kyle, and there's a guy on the board you still like, you got to grab him.
All right. Paul T said, well said. Well said.
Thank you, Paul.
Bob, nobody wants to pay War Daddy, huh? He's getting paid a lot of money, buddy. I don't know if anybody wants to trade and take that price tag that comes with him. So I know that he is being looked at, but can they work out a deal? That's going to be the question, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Warford has, I think it's a $12.1 million cap hit coming into the year. Where even if the Saints do deal him or even cut him, they're going to save themselves about $7.5 million of a cap hit of cap space, but they're still going to eat a few $1 million in cap. So I do think if Warford ends up getting traded, it's going to be with a team that he's going to quickly try to work out a longer term deal, probably at a lesser contract. Otherwise, nobody is going to pick him up, like you said, Kyle.
It's going to be difficult to unload the contract, man. Now, look, it doesn't mean that he is gone. Right. Until he's actually gone. And if you're looking at 2020, His base salary is going to be $7.6 million. His signing bonus is $2.1 million. His roster bonus is $750K. His workout bonus is $100K. He restructured his contract to $2.2 million, right? The cap hit is $12.875 million, right? Dead cap money is 5.1. That's a lot of dead cap money. All right. So yeah, and that's a lot to really pay him. And then we have to pay him $8.5 million in cash as well. So Walford he has a very lucrative deal for himself. Not sure the Saints can be able to unload it. It's going to have to take a lot of restructuring. It's going to have to take a team that's willing to do the restructuring and have a need at the guard position. They have to have a need for some sort of veteran presence like Larry Walford to be there and available. Or they can say, hey, we can wait until you guys cut him.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, and honestly, that's what happens in a lot of these kind of situations. And like you said, Kyle, that all this speculation does not mean that Larry Warford is going anywhere necessarily. And the Saints do have the luxury of waiting until June 1st to really have to make a decision on that. I mean, if they release Warford after June 1st, then they're responsible for that entire cap hit for the season. So in other words, if Larry Warford is still a Saint by June 1st, he isn't going anywhere unless somebody steps up to the plate and makes a deal for him. Because at that point, the Saints are going to stop negotiating trades as well, to deal Warford anyway.
Right. All right, Debo. Debo, you have some great comments, interesting comments. I can't do this, Sean. You gotta do some splaining, huh? Yeah, I got you, man. But he ain't gonna. I just want to let you know he ain't gonna explain.
No, he ain't.
They're not going to explain what they're doing in the draft. John Smith looks like the Saints are not trading up.
Well,
it doesn't mean that they haven't put the effort into trying to trade up, though, John. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, John, and not only, I mean, we only have 7 or 8 picks left to go in the second round, but the Saints don't pick until the 24th selection of the third round. So there's still, they might not move into the second round, but if they see a guy early in the third, they can still swing a deal to go get him then.
Yeah, Debo, you said teams can draft a guard just like the Saints did, right? And they don't need an old man, Larry Walford. Well, Larry is going to be 29 this year, or is 29, and then he's an unrestricted free agent next season. Saints have restructured his contract once before to be able to alleviate some of the cap hit that they had. Was it last season, Bob, or the season before?
No, it was leading up to last season. You're right. I think it was done right before the draft, as a matter of fact.
Debo, I don't believe we wasted our pick on a GB center. You need a drink? All right, man, I'm right behind you, but hold on, man. Don't jump off the Crescent City connection yet, okay? All right, well, Debo, we gotta talk you off the ledge now.
Yeah, we do. I'm worried about the Debo.
The Ravens got Patrick Queen and Dobbins, 2 guys that Bob coveted. I can tell you that much. And they are drafting pretty well in Baltimore.
And Baltimore has drafted well in recent seasons. Last year they came into the playoffs with the number 1 seed, I believe. So you can't argue with the results.
Right. You really can't.
The Rams
are doing very well. They learned very well from Ozzie Newsome.
Yeah, they did. And I repeat, I hate the Rams. I love you, Jim Everett, if you're tuning in, but I hate the Los Angeles Rams.
So what happened?
They just drafted Van Jefferson.
Oh, wow. All right. Van Jefferson is headed to the Los Angeles Rams. Paul T. Saints are looking linebacker. Is there a difference in the search for an inside linebacker, Paul, or an outside linebacker? Or can they usually play both positions? Good question, Paul. Bob, inside, outside, what's the difference?
There is a big difference. But I'll tell you this. Look at the linebackers that the Saints have now. Even AJ Klein, who just recently departed for Buffalo. Klein could play inside and outside. Demario Davis can play inside and outside. Alex Anzalone can play inside and outside. And they were tinkering during the preseason last year with Caden Ellis, both inside and outside. And even when you're talking outside positions in a base 4-3, you're talking a weak side spot where you have your linebacker more in open spaces, usually a lighter weight, more athletic guy, or over on the strong side where the opposing tight end is going to line up. If they go with one tight end, it's usually a little bit more heavy trafficked, but that's a linebacker that's going to be bigger but athletic enough to cover a tight end in the short and intermediate routes. So what I just mentioned about Davis, Klein, Craig Robertson, what are the one thing that all those guys have in common? Versatility. And whoever the Saints draft at linebacker, if they draft anybody, is going to have to be a guy that can play at least two of those linebacking spots, either inside and one of the outside spots or both outside spots. And that's what we were talking about Logan Wilson earlier. That's what I love about Logan Wilson is the fact that he did play all the linebacking spots at Wyoming. He can and does operate well in traffic, but is also athletic enough to make a play in space as well. I hope that helps answer your question, Paul.
Yeah, very detailed, very to the point. All right. John wants to know, who are the Saints getting as their third QB? Nobody knows. John,
My
nobody.
feeling there is that they'll get a veteran, so that way they can allow Taysom Hill to be Taysom Hill. Kyle, you brought up Andy Dalton as a possible pickup if the Bengals release him, or even try to swing a trade for somebody like Dalton. There's bigger names like Cam Newton and Jameis Winston still floating out there. And we don't expect either player to make a decision on where they're going to go until after they see how the draft settles, which makes sense for them because they want to see where these rookie quarterbacks are going to go. It is entirely possible that the Saints, just say, we're just going to go with two quarterbacks, and if something happens to Drew where he gets dinged up, we're going to scour the waiver market for a vet at that point. I'd find that hard to believe. It's probably the least likely scenario.
Yeah. I don't think so, man. They have to bring in somebody, and most likely it's going to be somebody who's on the market, a veteran who could possibly just sit as a possible insurance policy, right? So. All right, Debo, you back. Hold on, Debo. Let me get you up there, man. Alex and Kiki are not dependable. Okay. It's disgrace. I'm tired of hearing about practice squad. You draft rookies being our saviors. Wow. Okay. Good opinion.
It is. As a player, I love Alex Anzalone. I did from the minute he came out of Florida, and I'm a Gators fan anyway. Sorry, all you people that love LSU, but I am. The knock on Anzalone in college and has followed him into the pros has been his lack of durability. When Alex stayed on the field, I think he played in every game his second year, and we saw what he's capable of doing. but he went down. Anzalone went down after 4 games in his rookie season and after 2 games last year. We need this team needs him on the field. He needs to prove that he can stay healthy to earn himself a big contract, by the way, too, because he's in a contract year. So you are right, Debo. It's difficult to count on players like Anzalone and Alonso when they simply can't stay in the lineup. I'm interested to see what Caden Ellis can do. The team was really high on him, and we saw a lot of good things out of him last preseason. Now, Caden wasn't an undrafted free agent, but he did come as a 7th-round pick. And I know for a fact that Sean Payton and Dennis Allen, the defensive coordinator, likes Ellis a lot. So if the Saints do not draft a linebacker, it's because they have confidence in Ellis and are going to keep their fingers crossed that Alex and Kiko are going to be able to stay healthy. And again, there are some veteran linebackers still out there on the free agent market that can come in and play good football.
Look, I'm kind of with Debo and some of these guys. We need playmakers.
Mm-hmm.
We need guys who are going to be healthy. And the knock on Thor coming out of college was injuries. And he has not maintained one full season out of 3. Yeah, out of 3. So I like Caden Ellis as well, John. He's a good player, good bloodlines. Yeah, his dad was good, but hey, you got to be available in today's NFL. Let's go back to Debo talking about Traquan Smith as well as Alex are goners after this year. Oh my gosh. All right. So Traquan Smith, man, a lot of people, this is one of those do or die seasons for him as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and frankly, I think it's a little bit closer.
It could be the training camp do or die, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think Traquan has been given plenty of opportunity, to be able to showcase himself. We have seen flashes of a productive receiver, but he just hasn't been able to string it together. And the knock on Traquan, and I did not like the pick of Traquan Smith when the day that they made it, because watching film on him at Central Florida, I saw a guy with alligator arms, a guy that did not like to extend himself or operate in traffic, and therefore he chopped his steps a lot. Unless he was in open space, he chopped his steps a lot, and as a result, did not and could not get separation from defensive backs. We have seen all the same kind of things as a pro. And by the way, Paul, I see you, Paul. How is Denzel Mims still on the board? The reason is we're talking about him. The Saints already have a Traquan Smith, and when I looked at the film of Denzel Mims at Baylor, I see a bigger and faster Traquan Smith, but he's Traquan Smith. He does not go over the middle when he's asked to. He does not overextend himself for a reception, and therefore he's not a quarterback's friend.
Good point, man. Alligator arms for a wide receiver is a bad combination in today's National Football League. You can't keep on hearing steps. You know they're going to hit you, right? Yeah. So, John, you like Mark Barron. Mark Barron's a decent player, real decent player. He might be the type of veteran that could get signed by the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, he absolutely could. I mean, if you want a cover guy, Barron's a former collegiate safety, a former All-American collegiate safety. And he bulked up during his time in the league so he could stay on the field in some running situations. And then the opposite end of the spectrum is a guy like Alec Ogletree, who's struggles a little bit in coverage, but is a great run defender. But those are precisely the type of veteran linebackers that we're talking about, that you can bring in to give you depth if an Anzalone or an Alonso were to go down again.
Debo, my man, all the top quality talent is off the board. Everybody else is just a risk-reward player. That's a stretch. I think we still have some talented young people on the board. Matter of fact, let's talk a little bit about that. Who's still available, Bob, in your opinion, that fits the Saints profile?
Well, and thank God it's not Denzel Mims because he just went to the Jets at the 59th pick.
Okay.
But no, that's a good question. And Debo, believe me, we do get your frustration. But I'm going to throw out a couple names to you. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, 4th round. David Onyemata, 4th round. Jari Evans, 4th round. Marcus Colston and Zach Strief, 7th round. Terrell Davis, Hall of Famer. Shannon Sharp, Hall of Famer. Tom Brady, Hall of Famer. 6th or 7th round selections. Now, that's the top. That's the exception rather than the rule. So again, I get your frustration, but there are still a lot of talented players on the board. We were just talking about wide receiver. I love KJ Hill, great route runner. Really productive slot receiver who can play outside. Brian Edwards and Tyler Johnson, both bigger receivers. Edwards has underrated, sneaky athletic talent. Texas has a few 2 wide receivers. Their names escape me off the top of my head, and I have it written down on another piece of paper. But Texas has 2 wide receivers who are a writer at SI.com, John Hendrix, absolutely loves. So there's still some decent talent there. Tight end. If you want a receiving tight end to give a little bit of support to the receiving core, you have Harrison Bryant, who's my favorite tight end in this draft. He's out of Florida Atlantic. Thaddeus Moss is an outstanding blocker with a good upside as a receiving threat. Bryson Hopkins out of Purdue is a terrific receiving tight end who isn't going to give you much as a blocker, but he's going to help in those multi-receiver sets. Adam Troutman out of Dayton, you're probably going to hear his name tonight. He's a great tight end prospect as well. Patriots are about to make a pick out of 60, which apparently they traded with the Ravens for.
Their pick is in. Pick is in.
I'm just trying to give you a hope, Debo.
Did the Patriots trade?
Yeah.
That's for this round?
Pick number 60, 2nd round.
Wow.
KJ Hill to the Saints, says Paul T.
Paul, I hope you're right. I love KJ Hill.
Let's see. Bob Busek. Senior. Think Brian could come in and start? I'm surprised Bond hasn't gone off the board, Bob.
I am a little bit too. When I did my draft profile on him, I saw a guy who was used as an edge rusher a lot at Wisconsin, but he projects more to a outside linebacker in the pros, where he's going to be asked to cover a little bit. But he showed some nice coverage skills. He has really, really good Zack Baun out of Wisconsin. That is, he has really, really good zone awareness. Athletically, he has nice speed. So he can run with some of those faster tight ends. And he's a good sideline to sideline player. So he can get to the edge and keep a running back from getting around the corner quickly. I think Bond could be a potential early starter on early downs. He's going to have to develop his pass coverage a little bit because, again, it's not – I like Bond's coverage ability potential. He just wasn't asked to do that a lot at Wisconsin. But he does have the full potential of a 3-down linebacker, which brings us to, there's still a number of linebackers. Bond, Logan Wilson from Wyoming, Malik Harrison out of Ohio State being my top 3 at the position, who would be great fits for this New Orleans defense as well.
Yeah. A pick that went under the radar, we didn't talk about, 2 picks. Trayvon Diggs going to Dallas, the cornerback out of Alabama, and Cam Akers, who I love, out of Florida State, going to the Los Angeles Rams. All right. Those are two picks that, wow. Okay, so the Patriots took the linebacker Josh Uchi from Michigan. He's a good little player, right?
He is. He is. He's going to be an edge rusher for him. He has. He doesn't have the prototypical size of a defensive end, but we know the Patriots love those tweeners, and you know a lot of those kind of guys have had good careers for New England. Yeah, including a couple guys that they got in recent seasons. Listen, the Patriots lose big names almost every offseason, yet they've done such a spectacular job at retooling because they draft versatile guys, and the New England has what I call the shotgun approach, and the shotgun approach is I call it that for this reason. If you spray the wall with buckshot, you're bound to hit something. And that's why we see New England trade. New England maybe more so than any other team trading down in the first round to accumulate picks on that second day, second and third round picks. So they'll turn one early pick into 3, 4, 5 picks through the second, between the second, third, and fourth rounds. Your odds of hitting on a player or a couple players are much, much higher if you do that. Obviously, you miss out on your stereotypical blue chippers.
Right.
But again, yeah, NFL history is littered with people that have come into the league. Hell, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara, second, third round draft choices. They are as good as anybody in their position at the league. So you're still going to get stars at this level. It's just maybe they had a bad combine performance. Maybe they had some, maybe they had some injuries in college that dropped them, and all of a sudden they get healthy. That's why they still hold the draft on days 2 and 3, guys, because these are players. Obviously, the later round players, your percentages of hitting it as a star are a little bit lower, but they're still there.
All right, Paul T. Debo say we're not going to get Baun. Bob wanted to know if we're going to get a QB. And Paul T., do you always get the good feeling when the Saints pick from the colleges such as an Ohio State or Florida, etc.?
I'll address the QB first. Even though we saw Jalen Hurts go off the board, Jake Fromm from Georgia is a seasoned system quarterback, but the system that he excelled in at Georgia was a very similar passing system to what is operated by the New Orleans Saints. And I actually wrote about that early in the draft process, how Fromm's skill set would be a nice fit for New Orleans system. Jacob Eason has an absolute rifle and is a big quarterback. He has the measurables you want at the position.
Okay, looks like we lost Bob's feed.
Did we lose me?
All right, guys. You guys sit tight. Let me see how I can get these guys back into the studio.
Well, the Tennessee Titans are back on the clock, and I'm a little disappointed in what I see by Mike Vrabel, the head coach, because his setup in his house last night was causing a lot of controversy through the first round of the draft. We decided to dial back a little bit in day 2. John Robinson is at the general manager. Well, let's see where the Tennessee Titans are going. And remember the draft. With the 61st pick in the 2020 NFL Draft, Tennessee Titans select Christian Fulton, defensive back at LSU. So Christian Fulton, another member of that LSU secondary that has been so draftable over the years, is now on the board. Now he had his issues at LSU. He was slapped with a 2-year ban at one point. And PED test with someone else that eventually was his appeal that was denied, and then take it for the start of the season. It was just 1 year, and the whole family knows exactly what this family is going through, and that family is yet to walk the draft without one of his biggest fans, his grandfather.
Can you hear me, Kyle? I was the only one here for a moment. You had me sweating.
Okay, we are back. Sorry, guys. Had some, I guess, a little internet going down. Uh,
And now, John Robinson high fives all the way around as they get their guy, Christian Fulton, the quarterback out of LSU. And
all right, Paul T, do you think about the colleges? And Bob was answering that question. Let's see, Titans on the clock.
The pick is it.
We need some antidepressants for this draft. All right, Debo.
We need to meet Debo, that's for sure.
Debo is funny, man.
Okay, here's the pick. AJ Dillon.
AJ Dillon. All right. No, we were talking about Dillon not too long ago. I think it was on yesterday's broadcast. He's a good young guy. Running back out of Boston College, you know?
Yes, Boston College.
Gone to the Green Bay Packers to help Aaron.
But Kyle, considering the picks these teams are getting, I know that some of the fans are not too happy with the talent that's going off the board. But how do you think this is going to impact the AFC and the NFC? Some of the new players. I mean, of course, you need to give them some time to develop. But how do you think? Do you think it's going to even the playing field? Because you know the NFC has been so much stronger the last couple of years. So how do you see the picks that they're getting now? Do you think it'll even the playing field with the AFC and the NFC?
Which particular picks are you talking about? Because you got to look at the team to see if the team is, if that pick is really an impact pick, or is it just another arbitrary pick? Those are some of the things you have to think about. Point in case. So the Rams got rid of Ty Gurley, right? Ty Gurley is now with Atlanta. They needed to have a solid running back. So they got the young kid out of Florida State University, Akers. So those are the type of picks that you can say, okay, I can see there's going to be some sort of influence, right? The kid can come in, he can run, he's a good receiver out of the backfield as well. So, yeah, he has that versatility that in today's National Football League you need to have. So, yeah, I can see someone to that nature. And let's just go through some of these picks, man. If you look at Christian Fulton from LSU going to the Tennessee Titans, I think that's a great pick. You know, Kenny Vaccaro was their safety. And now Fulton is there. Fulton is an excellent, guy, young technique, but he's still what? Young. You got this kid, Denzel Mims. Bob didn't quite like the fact that he has alligator arms, but he's a big, strong wide receiver. Maybe he can learn a thing or two under the right coaching.
Right.
And that's another point, guys. You have a guy like Van Jefferson that goes to the Rams. Well, the Rams needed to get a good quality wide receiver. They just let Cooks go to the Texans, right? So a guy like Van Jefferson, who has a good pedigree underneath him, a real solid performer at the University of Florida, yeah, he can be able to come in and make an impact. So, yeah, it just depends upon if this player is going to the right team that has the right coaching to help them, and they can be able to, I guess, coincide and make the best of the whole situation, right?
Gotcha.
All right, so let's see. Kansas City is up next.
Yes, their pick is in.
All right. Paul T, is Bob making more coffee? You better make some more coffee.
I haven't made a pot yet this morning.
Yeah.
I might have to do that. Looks like we're going to be picking pretty late.
Yeah. Guys, if you guys don't know this young lady here, this is Dr. Carla Antoine. Yes, she has a PhD.
I'm pleased to meet everyone. Debo, you're going to have to tell me more about Debo.
Debo, yeah, and Paul T, and look like Jerry is off the line. But Debo, man, you guys are very entertaining. Bob as well. Thank you for the comments. Let's see. We had a couple other people. John Smith, thank you for the comments as well, joining our broadcast. If you guys would like to have any comments, if you guys would like to call into the show, let me know. I will put our studio out there so you can call in and make a couple of quick comments to the rest of the panel. So just let us know if you'd like to call into the show. All right, guys, what we're going to do, let's see, we have a comment here.
Announcing a pick now.
Paul T say he heard the Saints are picking another center. Okay, no. Paul. I doubt that's going to happen.
I hope not. I think we need to go for a running back or wide receiver.
And Debo chimes in, the Saints trade up for the center. All right, Debo.
Speaking of, it hasn't been that much trading up. I'm totally shocked. I thought deals would be made. We would be moving up and all types of trades being made, but we haven't seen that, not only from the Saints, but we haven't seen that from not many teams at all.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering why they're keeping their cards so close to the vest.
Well, I don't know, but in the press conference with Mickey Loomis, it seems like these guys are trying to be as conservative as possible right now. Not being able to have that communication with everybody in the same room like they used to have. If they have to debate about a player, have that media debate right with one another. Everybody's at their own different locations. Sean is at his house, Mickey's at his house, and how do we communicate all of that? They have their WebEx that they're communicating through, but it's difficult, man.
You know, Carla, with that being said, how do you think, do you think that the picks that are being made now would be the same had they had their war room or been in, conjunction with one another, if they had been together?
I think there would have been probably more trading and more
deals
being made, and it's okay. You got Jerry Jones at home by himself. I'm surprised Jerry has made some pretty decent picks, but Jerry has a tendency to want to do some trades. He likes to do the wheeling and dealing. You don't see that from Jerry, right?
No.
You do see the Patriots, they stay with some of their mode and their philosophy where Belichick, what did he do? He moved down, right? So it just depends, man. Some of these guys, I just think they're taking a more conservative approach to this draft.
And do you think that it has a lot to do with it being a virtual draft?
I do. And you can hear some of the caution that was in Mickey Loomis's voice when it came to the draft. I just think these guys may not want to make bad decisions right now. And plus, maybe it's just they haven't found the player that they can, or nobody's willing to be that trade partner like in years prior, right? So if you don't have that trade partner who says, okay, I'm willing to be able to trade out and let you slide in for these other picks, what you gonna do? You gotta have somebody to play ball with you, right?
Right. Well, I see that I saw that Las Vegas got the actual draft for next year. So we'll try it again.
Yeah.
See how it works next year. I kind of like the excitement with the interactions with the young men, seeing the excitement and being in the same room, all of the draft picks. I just kind of feel like it's likened to the high school seniors, the college seniors.
College seniors, they're missing out on the big stuff, right? Missing out on the prom. You're missing out on the senior nights and all the good stuff we went through when we were in high school, right, Carla?
I mean, you lived for it, and I mean, how can you recreate that? And that's one thing I guess the thing that bothers me most is not having that opportunity to show your socks per se. I mean, some of the draft picks, they will wear certain socks on draft day. You know, I mean, you live for seeing the socks, and I mean, I know that it sounds mundane, but it's the truth. I know RG3 when he was drafted, I couldn't wait to see his socks. Hey, we got you back.
All right, Debo, and Paul T been waiting on you, Bob. Like, where Bob? Where's Bob? Bob? I'm like, man, come down from the CCC, Debo. It's all right. Bob is back.
He's a question there, Kyle, and to answer it, I can't see a full stadium in September. I'm sorry, I can't. Yeah. I don't think.
It will be difficult for us to have a full stadium, in my opinion, even by time of the playoffs.
Right.
If we do not get a hold on the numbers and have a significant dwindling of the numbers by fall, I can't see it. You know. All right, Paul T, want to know, Bob, did you make that coffee?
That's actually one of the things I was doing.
All right.
I'm on point number 3.
And Debo, undrafted free agency is more exciting than the NFL draft. Sorry, Debo, we're trying to make it as exciting as possible, but
do you see the Panthers pick is in?
Yeah, Jeremy Chin.
Let me tell you,
Chin, we did the video on.
Video on Chin, and it was very difficult to find information, believe it or not.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, he's a fast kid. He's a fast kid. He's not real instinctual as a back safety, but when you ask him to rush the line of scrimmage or play inside the box, he's a beast. I forget which one of our viewers brought up the possibility of the Saints signing Mark Barron earlier. Chin has a playing style a lot like Barron, and I could see a possible conversion to linebacker for this young man. As his speed dwindles later in his career. But yeah, like I said, he's not real instinctual as a deep safety. But other than that, he's an athlete that's going to make plays all over the field.
Yeah.
This was curious as to why they had such limited information available.
Yeah. Well, Bob, you missed it, man. The Saints traded up for a center, says Paul T. All right, hold on. I think we can share this on Chin here.
Great, guys. So we're into round 3 now.
Video. I just made a Chin video. I know, right?
That's Jeremy Chin. Looks good. Looks like a good guy.
Yes.
Good body type. I see what you're saying, Bob, that they can convert this guy to linebacker, right?
Logan Wilson just came off the board to Cincinnati with the first pick of the 3rd round.
Wow. Well, Cincinnati is having quite a good time in the draft.
Yeah, they are. I really like this kid a lot. I mean, obviously, Wyoming isn't on the national radar as far as NCAA powers are concerned. But like I mentioned in my draft profile, and numerous times over the last 2 nights, he's a sideline to sideline guy, very instinctual run defender with underrated pass coverage abilities. He's the type of linebacker that can stay on the field in every down and every situation. That's a good pickup for Cincinnati. I had him mocked in my mock draft, second mock draft to the Saints at number 88. So I wasn't that far off. It's just a shame he's off the board.
All right. How many more picks before the Saints, Bob?
23. 22 after that. The Redskins
just
ran.
23. All right. Just 23.
So with that, I see your coffee. I might have to go and make me a pop up.
Come on over, Carla.
All right. I'm going to turn it over to you guys for a few minutes. I'll be back.
Okay.
Okay, so the Redskins at pick number 66, second pick of the 3rd round. The pick is Antonio Gibson, a tweener. He's a running back, wide receiver. Basically one heck of an athlete out of Memphis, who's churned out some nice athletic talents in the NFL the last couple of years. Memphis has become a good little NFL feeder program. As far as Gibson's fit for the Saints, he probably would have been a wide receiver at the NFL level anyway, which is where he's listed on the ESPN draft rankings now. But we were talking before we had our technical difficulties a little bit ago. I think it was you, Paul, but I apologize, to whomever asked the question. What other prospects could be good fits for the Saints that are still on the board? I started to blow through my own personal offensive guys. Defensively, I mean, now that Logan Wilson is off the board, that's a blow. Like I said, I really like this young man. But Zack Baun is still there. Malik Harrison is a bigger linebacker who I really, really like out of Ohio State. Akeem Davis Gaither out of Appalachian State. is a guy who's been on NFL scouts' radar. Some were even projecting him as a possible second-round pick. Cornerback Christian Fulton came off the board. Let me see. I forget who grabbed Christian. The Titans grabbed him at pick number 61. So that talented LSU defensive back is gone. But as you guys know, if you followed me, I love the kid out of Georgia Southern, Kendall Vildor. Louisiana Tech's Amik Robertson. He's a smaller guy, but a really feisty cornerback with good athleticism and excellent man-to-man skills. Cameron Dantzler is an Aqib Talib type of guy, a bigger cornerback out of Mississippi State, who I did a profile on. I'd like Dantzler a lot. Bryce Hall out of Virginia. If Bryce would have come into the draft last year, declared for the draft last year, he was probable first-round pick. He slipped a little bit because he struggled with shoulder and ankle injuries this year, which certainly affected his performance. But he's still on the board as well. So like I said, guys, I mean, these are just the guys I like. I don't get paid to make these decisions like Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton. And I understand your frustration, Carla, and I know you are frustrated as well as a lot of people. But with the way this team is drafted over the last 4 years, look at the talented core and the record and the back-to-back NFC South championships that was largely built through the draft. This is a team that went 7-9 for 3 consecutive years. It's a roster that got old, and they whiffed on a lot of draft picks in 2014, 13, 14, 15, bad free agent signings. They've rebuilt it mainly through the draft. So while I understand that the pick of an interior offensive lineman, it isn't sexy, but it fills a need. Maybe they tried to move up into the second round or early into the third round. Maybe they didn't. But I find it's difficult to argue with their draft strategy in recent years, with draft results in recent years. Carla, do you still have any fans? You did a lot of videos for us over the last few weeks.
Yes.
Is there anybody that you became a fan of as you were putting together their videos that's still on the board?
Let me look. I haven't been crossing them off since I didn't get a draft book. Blacklock, I'm not sure if you requested Blacklock. I really, but I know he's off. He's off the board. I know he's gone. Justin Herbert, believe it or not. I never really had taken a look at him until I began to do the research for the video. I like him. He's with Oregon. He's a quarterback.
Yeah, he went early in the first round.
Right.
He's a blue chipper.
Yes, I liked him. I like Patrick Queen. Linebacker for LSU. I like Justin Jefferson. And I liked Love for sure. I liked him beforehand. I almost, believe it or not, I almost made a video for Antonio Gandy Golden. We didn't make a video for him, but I liked him so much, his intelligence, and his athleticism as well. So I liked him. I almost made a video for him. But with all of the videos that because I haven't kept up, I wasn't scratching them off, and I should have. With all of the videos we've made, who's still left on the board?
Oh God. A lot of the prospects that I named a couple minutes ago are the ones that I have studied that are still available. But I know you were making videos for the other writers as well. And I don't know how many you actually made. Folks that are tuning in with us, I do apologize. I can't see, without Kyle or Brendan on, I can't see the comments. So if you're asking questions or making comments, I'm not ignoring you. I can't see them.
Let's see. I might be able to see them.
Okay.
I can see. Let's see. I made to answer your question, I made over 50 videos. Believe it or not, all day and half the night for 2 days. Okay. Amik Robertson will be successful. Mark my word. That's Paul T. He will be. That was another video that came in because it was the whole crew. Paul T says Terrell Lewis.
Out of Alabama, yeah, he's a really talented edge rusher. I mean, if you're looking for a more traditional 4-3 set linebacker, Lewis is going to struggle in coverage, especially early on. But he's a guy that can really get around the edge after the quarterback. If he's available for the Saints, again, he's not. If he's on the field in a passing situation, it's because he's going to blitz the quarterback. He's not going to take on a tight end or cover anybody out of the slot like some of the other linebackers that we have talked about. But Terrell Lewis is coming from a line of talented Alabama pass rushers. So yeah, he's going to be an asset to the Saints or somebody.
Here we go. The Jets. The pick is in. Ashton Davis, safety, California.
I didn't do a lot of research on him, mainly because I didn't consider safety a position of need.
Mm-hmm.
But the reports that I read from scouts were that he's a very intelligent player. Basically, he's the kind of guy that can captain your defensive secondary. He was a hurdler, and just as I say that, they're bringing up track and field footage. He was a champion hurdler in high school and college, so he does have nice athleticism on the back end, and probably a good pickup for the third round. Nice range with that athleticism of his. As far as if he's going to be down in the box, he's either going to be blitzing the quarterback or as a run defender. He's not fluid enough as an athlete to pick up a guy man to man in coverage down the field. But like I said, when I did my profiles, I tried to stay towards positions that I thought were positions of need for the New Orleans Saints. So I didn't do a lot of research on the safeties.
Now, Zack Baun, is that the way you pronounce his last name?
From Wisconsin?
Available?
Yeah, he is available. He's one of my favorite linebacker prospects left in the draft. He has great awareness when he's in zone coverage. Not a strong man-to-man cover guy, but only because he was used as an edge rusher a lot by Wisconsin. So he does have, he's another guy that was compared to A.J. Klein as far as NFL comparisons go by a lot of scouts. And when I watch film, I could see why. He has a nice burst into the offensive backfield. Like I said, really smart player. Needs to work on his man-to-man instincts, though.
That's one thing that I found out about him in a video. The Seahawks pick is in.
Yeah. Offensive lineman.
Damian Lewis, yeah, guard.
So Carla, let me ask you this. I want to switch gears.
Yeah.
LSU has all these talented players coming into the NFL this year.
Yeah.
How talented a team do they have coming back to defend their national championship?
You know what? I was wondering that a lot of the guys that are in the draft, few of them are seniors. Most of them are juniors. Mm-hmm. And you have to wonder, with so many eligible and entering the draft, how many of the core teams is left. And so I think it's going to be a real test for Coach O to see how he rebuilds. There's no way that he can lose all of those players and keep the continuity. I mean, you're talking about a new quarterback, and I'm not sure. I'm not sure how the next quarterback can step into, Burrow's shoes. And I mean, you can't get any better than a perfect season. So just really not sure how Coach O is going to go forward. But one thing I know is that he's getting paid top dollar. to do his job, and so he's going to have to do it well. The next thing I know is that LSU had a stellar, perfect year this year. So the talent that they have coming out of high school wants to go to where? LSU.
Mm-hmm.
You know, used to be Alabama, used to be Florida, but now it's LSU. And so he has the pick of the litter. He can get the best, players in the country. So I believe this year is going to really test his skill in coaching, test his skills and recruitment, and test his skills in being able to actually rebuild and coach another championship team. Yeah, without Burrow. So we'll see how that goes. What's your
And
take?
I think that's a great take on your part. LSU, I mean, they're in the SEC, so they're always going to attract talent. One of the things that attracted LSU to Coach Orgeron so much was the fact that Coach O can recruit so well. And so we know LSU is going to have talent. But like you said, with all these junior eligible players coming out of Louisiana State in the draft, they're losing a lot of starters on both sides of the line of scrimmage. So the team, although I have little doubt that the team's going to be as talented as all of the top talents in the country, but they're going to be inexperienced. So without having the schedule in front of me, they might struggle early on in some big games, but I would expect them to be a lot better at the end of the season than they are at the beginning. Hopefully, if they have themselves a softer schedule, they won't drop any games in the beginning of the season. So that way they're at their strongest when they face their biggest opponents down the stretch.
Sounds good. I'm not really sure how familiar you are with Louisiana high schools, namely New Orleans. But we have a high school here, and I know that LSU get a lot of players. Tulane University does as well, and that's Cougars. It's a high school that goes to championship just about every year. They turn out some pretty talented football players. We have a question here from Paul T. But right before that, let's see. He said, thoughts on Troy Dye, outside linebacker out of Oregon. He wants to know your view on.
Troy Dye is a really heady, smart player. He's one of those versatile kind of guys that I was talking about that the Saints like so much. Troy can play either the weak side or strong side. He's a little bit limited in space athletically, but he reads opposing offenses really well, has a great feel for his own defensive schemes, and therefore he's really successful in zone coverage. And he's a ball player. He's going to be successful in whatever system you put him in. And I saw your question about Perrine, the running back from Florida. I like Perrine a lot. I like Florida a lot. The best NFL comparison I can make for Perrine, and I heard other scouts, read other scouts do the same. He has a running style like Mark Ingram. He's a really solid load and an angry runner between the tackles. Perrine doesn't give you much as a pass receiver. I mean, he's a decent check down option, but he's not going to be the kind of guy that's running pass patterns down the field for you. He is a 15 to 20, 22 carry a game kind of guy, gets stronger as the game goes along and wears down opposing defenses. So if you're looking for a guy like Mark Ingram for your defense, Perrine is one of the guy, the type of guy that you're looking for.
Okay, Brandon Jones. Okay, we have another question. Let's see. Where do the Saints get Breeze's replacement? Covered that, right?
That is the elephant in the room. Yeah, we cover it, but you can't cover it enough. I think it's safe to say, guys, that it's not going to be this year. there was a lot of speculation about the Saints possibly drafting Jordan Love. I didn't particularly love that idea, but I would have supported it. And obviously New Orleans, whether they made an attempt or not, we'll never know. But Tua didn't slip far enough for New Orleans to trade up and get him.
Right.
I always felt that Drew Brees' replacement would come via draft pick. There are a handful of quarterbacks that I like coming out of the draft next year. And that's not to even mention the kind of guys that are going to have seasons. Remember, coming into this year, Joe Burrow was projected as a probable third round, maybe a second round pick. Well, we saw where he was drafted based off of one outstanding college season that lived up to the potential that he had when he was first recruited by Ohio State. There's going to be college quarterbacks that have that kind of season this year. We know that Sean Payton and the New Orleans Saints are aggressive in the draft, especially when they identify a player that they like. If I'm right, and Brees' replacement does ultimately come via draft pick, they're going to have to be aggressive in the draft to move up and get a quarterback to do so. Now, the interesting prospect is you have two former number one overall draft picks sitting out there right now as free agents in Cam Newton and Jameis Winston. Now, what if the Saints bring one of those guys in on the same kind of contract that they did with Teddy Bridgewater as insurance for Drew Brees? And they sign, and I happen to like Winston as a quarterback better than Newton, just my own personal opinion. But say they sign either one of them. Say they sign a Jameis Winston to a 2-year contract at a fairly reasonable team deal. And Brees does indeed step away this year. Winston is younger than Newton, first of all, has been pretty healthy throughout his career, and has put up some prolific passing numbers. Yes, I know the turnovers, and that'll have to be coached out. Hopefully it can be coached out of him. But what if they bring in a veteran like that as a free agent this year that can step in and play good football as a Drew Brees replacement next year? Or what if the Packers drafted Jordan Love this year? What if things get a little bit dicey with Aaron Rodgers, and all of a sudden Aaron Rodgers or a Matt Stafford out of Detroit hit the free agent market the way Phillip Rivers and Tom Brady did this year? It's given me a little bit of pause in thinking that the next quarterback would definitely come via the draft. While I still lean that direction, the type of quarterback movement that we have seen with veterans that you never thought would be going anywhere this year, we might be turning a new leaf into NFL player movement. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens at quarterback. It's not something that
has a question that just popped up. He says, bruh, I've been at everyone's head saying that was a good pick. Sean got something up his sleeve. Yeah, not when he's wearing a tank top. Blew a first-round pick on a sideline player.
Listen, I understand the frustration. And I think it shocked 99% of us that Sean Payton and the Saints went for an offensive lineman. But I get the logic behind the pick. And Cesar Ruiz is, if he's not going to start this year, he's definitely in the starting lineup in 2021. We saw how much the Saints interior line struggled in that playoff loss to Minnesota, and in a couple of other matchups down the last part of the season. That didn't get lost on the coaching staff, and that's why they made this pick. I mean, it is, like I said, I know it's not sexy, and I know that there are other needs on the roster to fill, But the Saints have drafted offensive linemen extremely well. So I have confidence that Cesar Ruiz is going to be a good player.
Let's see, Rainer McGarton. He says, "Who that from Germany?"
Who dat? Hopefully things are going well over there in Europe.
Exactly.
Brendan, welcome back, my friend.
Thanks. I had to get some dinner. I think for Bob and I both, it's a little later. So, eating dinner at like 9:30 wasn't ideal, but it is what it is. I see Carla's just eating now.
It's fruit. I was trying to wait for someone to come in. I'm not sure how it's working with just two of us, but I'm having to kind of duck and take a spoon.
Hey, don't worry about it. There's no shame in sitting and see, you're eating something healthy. It's not like you're eating a thing of Oreos or something.
Yeah, it's fruit. Well, I have to be transparent. I do have a piece of cake.
But the Saints pick's coming up. We're not too far away.
That's great. There's another question.
I see you, Paul. Can you go into true detail? I think I see it. Can you go into true detail about Alvin Kamara's injuries, more specific than knee and ankle? Brendan, do you have any more specific injuries? I don't. I know the ankle injury was a high ankle sprain, but the knee injury, I'm not. John, I agree with you. I want Jameis Winston too. But Kamara's knee injury, I don't recall off the top of my head how much. How extensive it was or what ligaments.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that either. The only thing I've really heard is that one leg was never better than 75% throughout the season at any point. That's even during the games late in the season, specifically the one against Tennessee where he had his quote unquote breakout game of the year was still not past 75%. So I think it was just a couple lingering injuries between the two. I'm sorry we don't have more information on the knee injury, but especially when you have a couple things pop up in the same leg, sometimes you don't even know. Sometimes it's just one of those situations where you're like, my leg hurts and I have pain here, here, and here.
Mm-hmm.
That's really the extent of what I know.
Yeah, and
did you see John's comment? Trade up. Here we go.
Don't have any details yet, but if you're with us right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars pick is in. Yes. But John Hendrix, our writer for Saints News Network, just sent us a message that there's a trade up in the works for the Saints from 88. We don't have the details yet, though.
Thank you.
And this is an interesting one, right? Is who do they go get? Who are we trading up for?
Well, this is exciting.
The one thing, and I know, Saints Twitter would just go nuts right now. Both those quarterbacks have slipped.
Yeah, I know.
So is it okay? Is it Jake Fromm? Is it Jacob Eason? I don't know. But there's a strong possibility because both those guys slipped in round 3 that the Saints could be looking up to get their guy. And as I was coming on, you guys were talking about the quarterback situation. Is that going to come in the draft? So
I might have jinxed us by saying I didn't think that Breeze's replacement would come in this draft. And Monty, I agree with you, and I hope I did it right. I agree that we need defense, and I love Zack Baun from Wisconsin too. We've talked about him, a couple of different times tonight. I think he would be a great fit, for the Saints, and a potential every down linebacker too.
I can't wait to see what our team's doing right now.
I'm seeing here in the live comments that it is Zack Baun, but obviously we're still waiting.
Oh, wow.
On our screens.
Y'all want to know or no?
You know it?
It's just a rumor. It hasn't been confirmed yet. No other player.
Like I said,
I'm behind.
I'm sitting here just looking at pick number 73. The Jacksonville Jaguars pick is in, but no announcement yet. John is saying Zack Baun.
I got it from John Hendrix. Yep.
But
Zack
where?
Baun.
John just sent that. Y'all may want to close your ears.
That is the question, right? Where? Well, I will say this to Carla. It's worked out a little better today than it did yesterday for us and all the work we've done behind the scenes.
Shoot. I'm sorry, I'm muted. I was gonna chime off for a second just to double check, but you have that one, right?
I do.
Okay.
So I'm gonna peace out for a second. I'll be right
I'm not
back.
saying anything. I'm sorry, say that again.
I'm gonna go upload it real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, Bob, you'll be proud of us. We had that one up and ready and waiting. So, Devon Hamilton.
Just another really talented player from the Ohio State football factory.
Oh, yeah. Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Oh, I said, okay, the pick is the New Orleans Saints have moved up to the 74th pick in the trade with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, I already know who it is, though.
Yeah, we got that too when you were on mute.
Yes. Yeah, I remember. I literally, I think we called this one because I tried to get more live play with him.
I know I did. Baun was one of the players that I previewed, that I did a preview for. And I mentioned him a few times over the last couple of days. He was used as a pass rusher most of the last 2 years at Wisconsin.
All right, here we go. Here we go.
Okay. But like I said, Baun actually could have was projected in some mocks to be drafted in the latter part of the first round. He's definitely a first round prospect. Used as a pass rusher a lot by Wisconsin, but he has outstanding sideline to sideline range and a great burst into the opposing backfield. He has the athleticism. He does have the athleticism to cover tight ends down the field, and a great instinctive zone player. He just wasn't used in that role by the Badgers very much. But he's a great pickup for New Orleans. He's an instant contributor, and with the short-term potential of being an every down linebacker. This is a good pickup.
It is. I'm impressed. I'll tell you, Brendan and I made the call on this one, and I wasn't sure if he was still going to be available, but we were intentional about putting a video together on Braun with action and earlier today. So we were saying if he was still available, but it makes me really happy that we put the time in for this guy. And now he's a New Orleans Saint.
Yes, he is. And like I said, folks, you're getting, you Saints panickers, through social media, you're getting yourself a very, very good defender.
Yes.
Paul,
How
that's
we're
a great
excited
question.
about this one is what we were saying. Brendan and I anticipated this earlier today, so we put in some time on this video, and we were intentional some action shots. So we'll be doing a little more work on it, though.
Carla, you got the video loaded, right?
Yes, already loaded, ready to go.
Paul, your question is, why did Baun drop so far? And it's a good question. Yeah, he does have some question about his hand-to-hand movements, his upper body movement. Yeah, that's mainly when he's engaged with an offensive tackle as a pass rusher. He does have to improve his upper body movement a little bit. And yeah, again, and we've talked about how deep this draft is, at the linebacker position. And we've seen some run on some different positions, specifically the defensive backs in round 2, which is what's going to push a guy like Baun down to early part or middle part of the 3rd round, like we saw. Kyle, do you happen to know what the Saints gave up to move up?
Terms not yet released.
How do you feel about Zack Baun? You and you have talked about him.
I like him, especially at round 3. I think that's what you call a value pick. So, yeah, I like the pick. What the kid brings, I can see him in the black and gold, and he's just I think he's a good young man as well. He was projected to be a 1st rounder. I think he had 12 and a half sacks last season. Second team All-American. I mean, what's the not to like? And he's pretty good as an edge rusher. So yeah, what's not to like about him?
Carla, Kyle, I'm going to jump off for a little while because it's 10:15 here, and I have a 2-year-old that's still going strong, so I have to try to get him to bed.
All right, before you go, the Saints traded up to number 74. They took the top guy on the board. Still, we don't know exactly what they gave up. But, Bob, thank you so much for being with us, man. And we'll have a good night, young man.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably going to fight me going to bed. Kid's going stronger than what we are at this point in the night.
Looks like they gave up their pick in the 3rd round for next year.
Gave up a pick in the 3rd round next year.
If that's true, and thank you so much for the information. If that's true, that's one heck of a deal. I mean, that's not a lot at all.
Paul T says, "Take care, Bob. He's going to miss you."
Well, guys, if you'd like, I can try to log back on a little bit later.
Oh, we're logging off. No, but yeah, go ahead, Don.
All right, well, guys, thank you so much, for joining us tonight. Thank you for your input, your questions, your comments, and we're going to be on and off of the air tomorrow too. Remember, this draft is far from over, and there's still a lot of talented players on the board. But thank you so much, and you all have a great night.
All right, you too, Bob. All right, guys, we will be back on tomorrow briefly whenever the Saints have a pick. Go to si.com/NFL/Saints to be able to read. John Hendrix should have his report on Zack Baun up and ready for you to be able to read in a few minutes. All right, we really do appreciate you, Paul, Debo, Nasser Randy, Bob, all you guys. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you guys being with us for our draft coverage tonight. Dr. C, thank you so much as well. All that you do, as well as Brendan. If you guys look at our videos on the internet, that's the lady right there. All right. You guys have a good evening. Take care.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.